Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here on the stream for the Skip Barber Spec Racer Ford Endurance Cup as we make our way to Japan and down to Okayama for what should be a rather exciting 3-hour race. Yusuf Milky Zero Bin Sahel, and I will be your host, your commentator for the evening. I hope you're all having a wonderful Saturday afternoon, enjoying your Easter weekend. Well, I've got some news for you. Your Easter weekend is about to get even better. Now, we have qualifying starting in just under 5 minutes. Will be 10 minutes of qualifying, 3 hot laps. Everyone will have their own individual qualifying session. No chance of one driver doing a bit of a Nikita Mazepin and potentially causing an incident that would potentially affect another driver's hot lap. So everyone will have 3 laps all to their selves on the track. They'll all be happening simultaneously. That is the beauty of sim racing and more specifically of the iRacing platform itself. So we have 18 drivers out on track at the moment. There may be a couple more teams entering. I think there were a few teams that were just getting their final changes to liveries sorted, making sure everything was working. So with that said, let's take a look at some of the teams. We're going to be starting off with the team that are currently leading the practice session here for the Spec Racer Ford series. The Spec Racer Ford is the second class. Skip Barbers are the quicker class. We'll get to them in just a short while. So the quickest team at the moment is the number 2 car, as you can currently see on your screens, of the Wiener Schnitzels. Very nice little name, and we'll be seeing if they're going to be winning any schnitzels at some point today. Got a bit tongue-tied with that one. And they've got 1, 2, 3 teams, and currently they are sitting first, second, and third. Not in that order. It's the third team that are first, the second team that are second, and the first team that are down in third, and that is Foreigns Arabian, Austin Winner, and David Gaspers at the wheel of the 3 Wiener Schnitzels cars. Then down in P4, we've got this car, the Solo Warrior, and they're running with the Solo white livery in the 34 car. We'll be sure to keep an eye out for them throughout qualifying and indeed the race. Currently, the top 4 separated by just 1/10 of a second in practice, so we'll see if it stays that way in qualifying as well. P5, we have the number 11, and that is the Ray Esports racing car. And if we just get a bit of a better look at the car, there you go, the white and red Spec Racer Ford coming into play. We can't really see where the P6 West Tech Esports racing car is. Hopefully we'll be able to find them in due course. Down in P7 in the Spec Racer 4 class, in the Spec Racer Ford class, is the Mecha Pom sim racing car being driven by Tony Shuck. And he is in the black and white 246 Spec Racer Ford. And then we drop down to Brashman, or Brashman? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. My German is not the greatest, as many of you viewers will probably be able to tell. That's currently being driven by David Waters. It might just be Brackman sounds right. Then we jump down to Team Johan Buitenga. Buitenga, or is that Bultenga? I'm going to go with Buitenga. That sounds very cool. Team Johan Buitenga. I quite like that. And that's actually not being driven by a that is being driven by Johan Buitenga. So Team Johan Buitenga, it's all about him. I'm sure he is the number 1 driver. We can see teams having up to 2 drivers for the 3-hour race, but they can also run with just 1 driver and not have to go through any driver changes. And so far, it looks like we are just getting 1 driver teams at the moment. Everyone just thinking about themselves. 3 hours, not a huge distance, not a huge amount of time to be in the sim rig for. So I wouldn't be surprised if every team does have just the 1 driver. But Johan Buitenga, and he is in the number 260. That's the first of the Spec Racer Fords in the pit lane. The red, white, and a blue, kind of a default iRacing livery going on there. Then we've got Spunky Pants Racing being driven by Ian Gibson. He's currently at the bottom of the standings. But don't let that fool you. He's only 300ths off the pace of Johan Buitenga. And then only a further 10th down of David Waters in the Brackman Racing Spec Racer Ford. So Ian Gibson running in this white and black 893 Spec Racer Ford. But with that said, let's take a look to some of the Skip Barbers that are currently out on circuit. We won't necessarily be able to ride on board with every single one of them, but hopefully we will be able to run on board with a few. Now, our first contestant that we can look at is the team that's currently third in the practice session, the Two Fools Racing, and that's got Nick Vaughan Roberts at the wheel of the 111. The yellow, the skis. Is that skis? Skips. It's the Skips. Skip Racer Ford, I think we could call that. Or Skip Barber. What am I thinking? The Skip Barber car, and it's literally being sponsored by Skip, so it's the Skip Barber car coming through. And then in P4, we've got Team NAN being driven by Sam T. Spinell. Spinell? I've recognized that name, I think, from BUKC during my times in the Club 100 series. And they're going to do some donuts across the line. And, oh, into the wall they go. That will not be helping out the blue Skip Barber one bit. And the only other team that we could have looked at was the SPM Racing team being driven by Ephraim Pozzatti. Ephraim Pozzatti. That sounds almost Turkish and Italian. A very nice combination, to be honest. But to all of you viewers, let me know in the chat how you're watching. Let me know who you're here to support. If you are here to support a particular driver, or if you've just tuned in to see some quality racing and just here to see the best driver win and all of that shenanigans. Let's ride on board then. I want to sit in the cockpit. Let's go on here with Ludum Racing. Claudio Vaccelletre. I think I got that about right. My Italian should be decent considering I'm half Italian. But with that said, let's jump right on in. Let's get the full screen up and ride on board. This is just the outlap. Now, don't forget the Skip Barbers. They're not like most open-wheel cars. They don't really have a proper front wing. Yes, they've got that little flap underneath the front end of the car. Kind of looks a little bit like a shark in that sense. But there is not a lot of downforce on these cars. So it is all about the mechanical grip. And you do really have to wrestle the cars around to get them turned in. So don't be expecting to see a whole much or a whole lot of corner speed. These cars are very similar, I guess, at least in design, to the old F1 cars. We're talking going back to, I want to say, the late 60s. But I could be completely wrong. My knowledge of F1 cars in the olden days is, well, not quite the greatest. But let's see what Claudio Vaccelletre Claudio Vaccelletre will put out. And hopefully, at some point, I get to do what is quite literally my most enjoyed thing on a broadcast, which is bringing an Italian onto stream and speaking to them in Italian for a few short seconds. It lets me practice my Italian, and, well, maybe for our non-Italian speaking viewers, it's not the most entertaining thing, but for me, it is. So, Claudio will make his way through the start-finish line to begin his first lap. Nice and late on the brakes, down into turn one. Get the car right up onto the curb and then just allow the car to drift out wide. Pull it all the way back over to the right as you make your way down into Williams' corner. And there you can see the understeer coming through. The lack of a front-end downforce on the Skip Barbers as you make your way through the Mosses. And that is at turns 3 and down now into turn 4. Outward curve. One of the trickiest corners on the circuit, to be honest, because you do just want to let the car out so early on through the corner, but it's not what you actually want to do. You want to hold it tight, just like you see Claudio pulling through for Ludum Racing. Hello, Roger H., the other half of Two Fools Racing. So the teammate of Nick Vaughan Roberts. Best of luck to you and the team. Let's see what your teammate can pull out in qualifying. I'll jump on board with him after this lap and we'll see what he can pull out as Claudio makes his way through Revolver down into Piper. And he's rather piping hot, isn't he, on the exit of the corner as we make our way down what is almost, you know, this short little back straight down into Redmond. Diagonal braking just so that you can get on the brakes as late as possible. Pull the car back over to the left as you make your way down now into turn 9, Hobbs corner. Get the front end turned in as much as you can before stepping back onto the power. Flat out through Mike Knight. No sound of a lift, just the upshift down into turn 11, the final corner. No name for this one apart from last corner on the track map, and it is indeed the last corner. As Claudio Vaccelletre will make his way across the line. It is a 146.5. And that is a P2 because it's Giuseppe Tellini who has jumped to the top of the standings. Let's see what... Who do we say we would be jumping on board with? It was Two Fools Racing. I can't actually find them. Oh, never mind. Two Fools Racing. Good job out there, Roger. Your teammate, Mr. Nick Vaughan Roberts, has just put in a rather blistering 1:44.7, second clear of the DRS Wave Italy car. And they jump up to the top of the standings by a rather comfortable half a second. And we'll see whether Nick Vaughan can find any more time on his current lap. We'll go and switch out to the old juicy TV camera. Nice and late on the brakes in the 111 car. More tasty and tingly. Well, I think if it's any faster, it will be a rather tingly lap. Down then into Revolver, use up all of the track. Bit of dust being kicked up, bit of gravel being kicked up on the exit as you make your way through Piper. And a little bit too wide. That may have been an invalidation for Nick Vaughan Rogers. Sorry, Nick Vaughan Roberts. I got the two driver names somewhat smushed together. Through Hobbs then, Mike Knight and turn 11 remaining. Still got the Teenager Mutant Ninja Turtles car being piloted by Benny Simonson to complete their lap, as well as Mivano's Sim Racing being piloted by Manuel Luqueta. And Benny Simonson jumps to the top of the standings by 1/10. Let's see whether Nick Vaughan Roberts can improve as Manuel Luqueta jumps up to P3. And there you go, Nick Vaughan Roberts, a 44.5, just 700ths clear of this man right here in the 22 car, the TMNT. Benny Simonson's up to P2, or I should say down to P2. But let's see whether he can improve on his lap time. Also keeping an eye on the winner Schnitzels. They were 1, 2, 3 in practice, and in qualifying they're currently 1, 3, and 8. So I'm expecting them to, or at the very least, David Gaspers in the winner Schnitzel's 1 car to climb up the order somewhat from here. Don't forget to any of our viewers, when the race does start and when we kind of get past those 20 minutes or so and the action starts to die down, if the second drivers do want to jump on in, join me in the commentary booth. I would be most glad and most appreciative to have someone to talk to so I don't go crazy all by myself. Just hop in to the interview waiting room and I will try to drag you up at some point during the race. But I think for the first 5 or 10 laps or so, we'll go complete focus and we'll keep an eye on all the battles out on circuit. But here comes Benny Simonson through the final couple of corners, completely flat through Mike Knight. Got to turn in very early as almost a blind apex for turn 10. Through turn 11, use up all of the track on a corner exit. And across the line, looking to beat a 44.575 is Benny Simonson. And it's a 44.420. That is just about enough. Now, who do I want to sit on board with? Let's see what Mivana Sim Racing can pull out. Invalidated lap time. Not good at all for Mivano. How's Team NAN Sam Spinale at the wheel of the car as he makes his way through the hairpin of turn 5 down into Revolver. As always, use up all of the track into Piper. I do hope I can have a word with Sam Spinale at some point, because I'm pretty sure I recognize that name from Club 100, and more specifically, the British University Karting Championships, back when I raced in it a few years back. And if that is the case, I may have to be dropping some of that commentator bias on my fellow British karter. Other way, Sam Spinale makes his way through the final corner. Now, Benny Simonson has 1 more lap to go, as Nick Vaughan Roberts has put in a 44.369. Sam Spinale, a 44.593. That will jump him ahead of Franco Ruggieri. Now let's see what the Teenager Mutant Ninja car can do with Benny Simonson at the wheel. Into the final couple of corners we go. I do apologize to all of our Spec Racer Ford peeps because I haven't really been spectating any of their laps. Or just dipping a wheel on to the gravel. I wonder if that will cost him maybe 100th or so. It could be the difference between pole and P2 across the line. It is enough. It's a 44.170, and Benny Simonson will smash The lap time set by Nick Vaughan-Roberts by a whopping 0.2 of a second. Movado Sim Racing, they've just put in a 44.312, and they're going to slot their car in right between Benny Simonson and Nick Vaughan-Roberts. That is qualifying done and dusted. So, in the skip barbers, Benny Simonson and Manuel Luqueta will complete the front row of the grid ahead of Nick Vaughan-Roberts. Sam Spinale will make up the second row of the grid. SPM Racing of Franco Ruggeri and Forza TV Racing Team make up the third row of the grid. DRS Wave Italy being piloted by Giuseppe Tellini lines up in P7. And then it's not actually Ludum Racing of Claudio Vacalebre. I need to get that one right, but it is not the Forza, or pardon me, it is not Ludum Racing alongside them. It's actually, we're jumping down into the Spec Racer Ford for one car that has managed to squeeze themselves in, and that is the Winner Schnitzel's 3 car, if I'm not mistaken. It's my timing sheets update. So now I have no idea who is actually at the top of the order. Now, we have a 5-minute warm-up session. So, a quick chance just to talk about the track, maybe. Maybe talk a little bit about what we can expect to see here at Okayama International. Racetrack for those of you who may be slightly newer to F1, who don't remember the 90s, as I do. I only remember the 90s of F1 due to one thing. This. Grand Prix 2. Good old game. F1 back in 1994, and is one of the reasons why I know some of the older F1 tracks that existed. One of which is this track right here. Okayama used to be in, or on the calendar alongside Suzuka as one of the 2 Japanese tracks on the F1 calendar. Got removed later on in the 90s, and we haven't really seen it since. Also used to be known as the Pacific Grand Prix, because Suzuka held the title of being the Japanese Grand Prix. And you do have a few overtaking points here at Okayama. One of the biggest ones, turn 1, longest straight, or joint longest kind of straight. Down into turn 1, not the biggest braking point, but a good enough braking point nonetheless. And we'll probably be seeing quite a few moves being made down into turn 1. But the biggest overtaking point is down into turn 5. Now, while the back straight is probably around about the same kind of length as the start-finish straight, there is a very key difference in the 2 straights. The start-finish straight, you're making your way out of turn 11. And turn 11 is a fairly simple corner. Maybe a downshift, dip on the brakes, get the front end turned in, back on the power. Atwood Curve, turn 4 of the circuit, is a very tricky corner. And the braking, there's so many different ways to take it, it feels. Especially for a noob like me. You can do your standard, brake on the outside, get that nice turn in smooth, get back on the power. You can also go for more of a diagonal braking line to just really get onto the brakes as late as possible and then hold it tight around the corner, because it is a very, very long corner. It's a 180-degree corner, but it's called a curve because it is just so long. The longest corner of the entire circuit. And you come out at a fairly high speed as well. And then you've got a long run down towards turn 5, the hairpin, one of the slowest corners on the circuit. So it's a much bigger braking point down into turn 5 than it is into turn 1, which is why we're probably going to be more likely to see our overtakes occurring down into turn 5. Another overtaking point is down into turn 8, Redmond. If you can get a good exit coming out of Piper Corner, you could look for the run down into Redmond. Probably not going to be seeing too much happening into Hobbs, turn 9, right after Redmond. You go through the tight left-hander, and then you pull the car over to the left. So, yes, there is a chance that someone could try to send it down the inside for turn 9 while you're trying to set yourself up. Mike Knight completely flat. Turn 11, very slim chance of an overtake happening. Will only really happen if you get the exit out of Hobbs' corner completely wrong. Atwood Curve, as we mentioned, very, very difficult corner. Could also be an overtaking spot if you don't quite get the runner through Williams. That's turn 2 here at Okayama, right? You've got a fairly decent run going through the Mossa S, where you could potentially be seeing some cars trying to pull along the inside, maybe even looking for the outside to get that slingshot out of Atwood Curve. But Okayama, while you can kind of overtake at every corner, is also somewhat difficult to overtake, and will come down to how effective that slipstream plays, especially on the run down into the hairpin and down into turn 1. At the end of the day, this is an endurance race, one endurance series, I should say. The race won't be won in the first corner, but it can most certainly be lost in the first corner. And actually, with an endurance race, you can't even really lose a race in the first corner. 3 hours will be separating the drivers from the start of the race to the end, and 11 corners of Okayama. And I'm sure a lot of grueling laps around the circuit. I'm not quite sure how many driver changes we are expecting to see. I believe the fuel load was posted on the information, but I'm not really fully aware of how long a fuel load can go. I would expect the cars to be able to make at least 40 minutes. Probably expecting to see, I'd probably say between 1 and 3 pit stops. I don't know if the cars can make it to 1.5 hours. We are talking about open wheel cars and, well, what is almost a prototype in the Spec Racer Ford. So I don't imagine the fuel tanks will be huge. So probably going to be expecting 40, 50 minute stints. So maybe 2-3 stops should be enough to get them to the end. Another thing to remember is tyre wear. We'll probably be seeing some drivers maybe trying to pull double stints on their compound of tyres. And what double stints means, for those who are less familiar with these endurance racing terms, is that the drivers will come in, they'll put on a full tank of fuel, but they may opt not to change their tyres. This will save them 10-15 seconds in a pit stop, and while they'll lose time due to being on older tyres, it may not be enough to kind of counteract the amount of time that they were able to gain by not pitting. So we'll have to see whether any double stints do come through, and we might get one or so per team. Again, I don't really know what the tyre wear is like in the Spec Racer Ford or the Skip Barbers, but I have a feeling that we are going to be starting the race very, very shortly. And it is a lights out here at Okayama. It's a very good start for the 33 car. And it seems that the Spec Racer Fords just have slightly better traction off of the line. But it is the number 22 that leads the way, Ian De Vried, who will lead from the Mivana Sim Racing of Manuel Luqueta. Manuel Luqueta still in the Skip Barber following qualifying. Seeing that switch, as that is a huge incident in the background, and that is not a good start to the race. We're actually going to have a bit of a rewind and see if we can spot what happened here. It was the 34 car. I'm going to try to switch to them as quickly as possible. We're looking at the 17. Oh, it's just a tangle, and they just flip back out onto the track, and everyone else is just a complete passenger. And you can see they're really struggling. Front toe completely mashed up as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lead the way. Ian De Vried ahead of Mivana Sim Racing of Manuel Luqueta. And let's ride on board with the Italian, who slots in right behind Ian De Vried. Remember, it was Benny Simonson who was at the wheel of the Skip Barber during qualifying. So they've had a driver swap heading into the race. I guess that means Ian De Vried maybe slightly better on those cold tyres, slightly better at the race start from defending. And at the moment, he's been able to hold on to the P1 spot magnificently. Still pretty much a nose to tail, but early stages in the race. 1, 2, 3, 4, Ian De Vried's, Manuel Luqueta, Nick Vaughan-Roberts, and Sam Spinale at the front of the Skip Barber class. And I tell you what, Manuel Luqueta is getting rather close to the back of Ian De Vried, but no luck in finding a way through just yet. Been a good start for the Winner Schnitzel's-car of Austin Winner, currently leading the Spec Racer 4 class, or Spec Racer Ford class, and P5 overall. A very good showing so far. Not a huge amount of pace difference between the Spec Racer Fords and the Skip Barbers. Probably talking about a few seconds, maybe 2 seconds maximum. Rather similar to the kind of pace discrepancy we'd see between a GT3 class and a GTE class. That is a little bit wide from Ian De Vries, and this is going to allow now Manuel Luqueta to close in. But again, into the double left-hander gives enough time for Ian De Vries just to regain composure, just to get back onto the right line. But this is all going to be helping, especially in the mental aspect. Manuel Luqueta, just seeing that the driver in front is making mistakes, knowing that you can start to just apply more and more pressure, as we're getting information from a certain driver from the Two Fools racing car that apparently the Skip Barbers will not be changing their tyres throughout the entire race. So those tyres can last a good 3 hours. Expect the pace to be dropping later on into the session. Sam Spinale puts more of his wheel onto the gravel than anyone else. I tell you what, the Forza TV racing team and the DRS Wave Italy, that's Daniele Forgiarini and Giuseppe Tellini, are currently struggling to find a way through on Forens Arabian in the Winner Schnitzel's car. And Austin Winner in the Winner Schnitzel's 2 car on the back of the Skip Barber, number 148. That is the DRS Wave Italy car. A lap of 3 of an estimated 1:02 according to my live timing. And is Mivana Sim Racing close enough at this time round? I do not think they are. So it is still Ian De Vries leading from Manuel Luqueta, Nick Vaughan-Roberts and Sam Spinale. Let's see if we can catch any potential battles. We can indeed. That's the number 10 of Franco Ruggeri, making his way past the number 11 of Dominique Bourreau. And maybe, just maybe, the Ray Esports car might try to find a way back through. As I say that, I think Manuel Luqueta was getting very close to the back of Ian De Vries. He's going to get a pretty good run coming out of the Hobbs hairpin. But not going to be close enough to have ascend into the final corner. Nice and clean from all of the top 4. Sam Spinale just starting to drop back from these top 3 ever so slowly. Something else to remember is setups will be playing a huge factor. You don't know how different teams have their setups done. Could be seeing certain just being able to bring the heat into their tyres a little bit quicker, and others might be opting for more of a setup that builds up the heat in the tyres over a more prolonged duration. But as a result, they may suffer lesser tyre wear. And all of this will become, I guess, clearer and clearer as we get further and further into the race. But once again, no changes between your top 4 drivers. And finally, the Forza TV racing team and DRS Wave Italy have found a way through on the Winner Schnitzel's car. And now is Winner Schnitzel's at 3, ahead of Winner Schnitzel's at 2 in the Spec Racer Ford class. And Roger H brings up a good point in the chat. How many driver changes will we be seeing? Each driver change adds on a little bit of time, so you want to really be minimizing as many driver changes as possible. Just comes down to how fresh do their drivers feel? Do they feel like jumping out of the car, putting in a new driver who might be coming in with maybe more of a fresh mindset? I think the amount of time you lose from a driver change is somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds. At least that's what it was when I did a Mazda endurance race. And that's the only endurance race I've ever done on iRacing where there was a driver change. So that's what my information is based off. It could very well be different in the Skip Barbers and the Spec Racer Fords. But we will have to keep an eye on whether those driver changes do come through. And we are actually starting to see, very interestingly, completely different lines being taken by Ian De Vries and Manuel Luqueta. Oh, that is a slide and a half. Good save coming through from Sam Spinale. And he doesn't actually lose too much time on the exit of Williams either. But he most certainly put a few wheels on the gravel and got a little bit sideways. But back to what I was saying about Manuel Lucata and Ian De Vries. We're seeing completely different lines being taken through turn 1. You see Ian De Vries coming out much wider on corner exit. And speaking of going wider, he's going wide as Manuel Lucata goes to the inside, down into the hairpin. And we have our first lead change here for the Skip Barber and Spec Racer Ford Endurance Cup. Manuel Lucata now leads not only his class, but the race as well. Now the question is, can he check out? Can he pull the pin? Can he pull the gap? So, Manuel Lucata now 4/10 clear of Ian De Vries. And I tell you what, Ian De Vries seems to be falling back just a slight amount. Now, I want to ride on board with Nick Vaughan-Roberts because I think now we'll see the difference in lines taken from Ivano Sim Racing and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And actually, it's fairly similar this time around. So I think it was just Manuel Lucata, when he was behind Ian De Vries, he was taking that slightly different line as... Well, I think Ian De Vries or Manuel Lucata going almost sideways through Williams, using up a lot more of the track on corner exit, but I think was somewhat forced to do so just by how wide the car wanted to take him. And you can see Ian De Vries running a tiny bit wide through Atwood Curve, whether that's a little bit of tyre wear already starting to kick in. Again, I don't know how the tyres handle on the Skip Barbers, but you do tend to see on iRacing, as you're seeing the Two Fools racing car, just lifting and coasting into the corners. And this is something else to remember when you have endurance racing. When you are the car behind, you can just sit in the slipstream and you can save fuel. You know, you can just sit behind the car ahead, you can lift and coast far more into corners, you can shift up earlier. And for the likes of Sam Spinell right now, who we ride on board with, he's going to be able to do the most of this. He's got a triple slipstream from the cars ahead. He can lift and coast, and this might mean that he can take his car to go one lap further on fuel. And this means, you know, it might save him that half a second, that 1 second in the pits, that little bit less fuel that he puts in, or he can go subsequently every single stint that one lap further. And when he gets to the final stint, he can do a much shorter stop. There's a term that does get used in endurance racing, splash and dash. Because that's exactly what you do. You dive on into the pits and you just put a little splash and dash of fuel in. A tad of fuel. And when you have races that are 3 hours long, you can be seeing stints. Let's say if a stint lasted 1 hour and 10 minutes, hypothetically. Your first stint, you go to 1 hour and 10 minutes. At the end of the second stint, you go to 2 hours and 20 minutes. But you then don't need a full tank of fuel to get to the 3 hours. You only need 40 minutes worth of fuel. So you're putting in pretty much half a tank. And the less fuel you have to put in, the better, because you're in the pits for a shorter period of time. So if you can save that one lap of fuel every single stint, once you get to that final pit stop, it will help you massively. You won't realize the effects of it early on. But once it all adds up after a few pit stops, that's when it can come huge. And there you can see Sam Spinell already lifting, coasting, and now braking. And as a result, Sam Spinell is off throttle. We're talking, what, 1 or 2 seconds off throttle? 1-2 seconds where he's not, at the very least, on full throttle. And that's one on the run down into the hairpin. He'll probably be doing it somewhat down into turn 1. Let's see if he does it here. Yep, a little left. So lifting and coasting is what Sam Spinell is pulling through. And once we get to that final hour, we'll see whether his efforts, his endeavors have paid dividends. Okay, timing just dropped very momentarily. I actually just want to see what's going on with the Winner Schnitzel's car. Currently, it is the Winner Schnitzels 3 from the Winner Schnitzels 2. Spec Racer Ford, 1-2 in the class, P7, P8 in the race. In the background, you can see the West Tech Esports Racing of Bobby West and Nico Schuck in the 246 Mech home sim racing car. But for now, it's Winner Schnitzels leading the way. Forens Arabian and Austin Winner at the helm of the number 2 and the number 33 cars, respectively. And what I'm fully expecting from the likes of Winner Schnitzels is they've got a big gap, and by a big gap we're talking about 3.5 seconds to the Westech Esports racing car. These two just want to be working together. And right as I say that, right as I say they want to be working together, Austin Winner goes down the inside, down into the hairpin of turn 5, and he will claim the lead. But Forens Arabian did not defend. And I myself, coming from an F1 sim racing background, you do tend to see this at tracks where you get what we like to call a DRS train, where the DRS is really powerful and just allows you to sit behind. If you've got 2 teammates at the front, they'll work together. They'll switch positions every lap just to give the other car DRS a chance to save their battery, a chance to save a bit of fuel, and they'll work together to climb up the order. And I wonder if Austin Winner and Forens Arabian will do this. I'm expecting them to work together right until, you know, we're talking about half an hour, 20 minutes remain, and that's going to be the point where they duke it out to the very end of the race. So let's see, now that Forens Arabian is behind Austin Winner, we'll have to see whether he searches for a way through. At the moment, it looks like Austin Winner is starting to pull away. I think Austin Winner out-qualified the Winner Schnitzel's car. And there was an incident on the opening lap of the race which saw Austin Winner drop down the order. And since then, he's been able to close in onto his teammate Forens Arabian. And now actually pass him, as up ahead, I tell you what, Ian De Vries was closing in on Manuel Lucetta. Just down to 2 tenths behind. That gap had expanded to about 8 tenths, you know, but has since dropped it back down. Oh, very late on the brakes from Ian De Vries, but he does get that front end just to bite, just to stick in and hold tight all the way through Redmond. Oh, that back end kind of stepping out from Manuel Lucetta into the corner, and he's going to run wide onto the gravel, and that is going to compromise him on the straight, but seemingly not by too much. Maybe those groove tyres just allowing someone through the gravel to pass through. And I tell you what, Manuel Lucetta is really using all of the track. A puff of dirt on a corner entry, puff of dirt on a corner apex as well. Manuel Lucetta really stretching the track limits as much as he dares. There you go again, another little puff of smoke coming from the outside front tyre of Manuel Lucetta's Mivana Sim Racing number 4 car. Let's actually take a look on how Giuseppe Tellini is doing. He's on the back of Daniele Forgiarini, riding on board with the DRS Wave Italy car on the back of the Forgia TV racing team. P5 and P6. We'll see whether there's a switch of position. You can see the closing speed, and Giuseppe Tellini will just lift off, will just lift and coast behind his fellow countrymen. Also, I do apologize if I'm getting nationalities wrong. I am assuming that Giuseppe Tellini is Italian. Sounds very Italian to me, so I think I could be forgiven if my assumption is incorrect. I tell you what, these skip Barbers, I know I said it in quali, but you really have to chuck them in. I mean, we're seeing that from Giuseppe Tellini, and we're seeing that kind of front end just understeering that little bit once the load gets placed on the front left tyre or the inside front tyre, depending on the corner. I was specifically noticing it down into turn 8 Redmond. If anyone does want to join in for a quick interview, then feel free to jump into the interview waiting room, and I can drag you on in for a quick chat. If a battle does happen, I will have to quickly dip back over to that, but it would be nice to have a chat with some of the drivers who are out on field, or with some of the drivers who are teammates of the drivers out on field, and could give us some insights, maybe some of the sneaky backroom strategies that we might be seeing in effect over the course of the day. Still Giuseppe Tellini. I don't know why I want to say Giuseppe Tellini, but Giuseppe Tellini. Again, lifting and coasting behind Daniele Forgiarini. And he will hold on to the position for now. You know what? Let's run on board with Franco Ruggeri. He's in the Skip Barber, but he's all the way down in P11 overall. P7 in this class, and he needs to work his way through some of the Spec Racer Fords, and oh, that's a Nico Schuck ahead, who runs completely wide through the hairpin. I don't know if that was intentional to leave room for Franco Ruggeri, who understeered himself and was a little bit too late on the brakes in the number 10 SPM Racing team. By the way, thankfully, there is no incident, there is no contact, and now there's 4.1 seconds between himself and the West Tech Esports Racing car. And you can see Bobby West just up the road. The gap now 3.4 seconds, and it is tumbling down. Oh, look at this. Dominic Baru and Ian Gibson. Dominic Baru on the outside, down into the Redmond hairpin. I'm just trying to listen to Ian Gibson's car, because it does sound like there is a slight issue. Is he going to pit? No, he is not. So clearly, whatever I'm hearing, I think it's just me that's hearing it, but it did sound a little bit sick when it was coming down the gears into Redmond. It's already lost about a second to Dominique Baru. .48.0 last time round from Ian Gibson. Sorry, 49.7. And Dominique Baru setting a 47.4. So I think it's just a plain pace difference between the two drivers. Moving back though to Franco Ruggeri. You can see that he's really closed in now onto Bobby West and left Nico Schuck far, far behind. Nico Schuck actually last time around 48.6. Yes, he did lose time when Franco Ruggeri sent it down the inside into the hairpin of turn 5, but still did lose out 2 seconds to Bobby West. For those of you tuning in, this is the Skip Barber and Spec Racer Ford Endurance Cup here at Okayama for 3-hour race, and so far we are about 22 minutes in. We did have a rather major incident right at the start of the race, which saw the likes of the Solo Warriors in the 34 car, Winner Schnitzels in the 17, and Ludum Racing all involved, and one car going several feet up into the air, and has compromised their race rather significantly. But as is always the case with endurance racing, anything can happen. And that could be when lapping drivers, when overtaking, just plain out mistakes, maybe even car issues, reliability issues. So key thing is to never give up and just always keep on pushing. You don't know how a race can fall back into your favor. So many times we've seen in endurance racing, albeit in far longer endurance races, we're talking 24 hours or 12-hour races, cars that are multiple laps behind are able to come back and win a race regardless. Many times actually happening on the last lap of the race, because that's really when everything starts going wrong. That's when cars' reliabilities really get tested, once they get right to the very end of a race. sometimes you even see drivers underfueling a car and not realizing that they've underfueled it. Anything could happen. They could even forget to put fuel in the car when driving into a pit stop. I know I once did that over on Assetto Corsa Competizione. Went out of the pits and my teammate said, "Melky, why is there only 1 litre of fuel in the car?" And to that, I said, "Oops." It was a bit more of an oops. It was not a good day for us. And that teammate ended up getting black flag later on, so it made me feel a lot better about my race. But Franco Ruggeri can now see the winner Schnitzel's cars up ahead. He's 3.5 seconds behind, and after he clears these two, he will then be ahead of all of the Spec Racer Fords, and then he can focus on trying to close up onto Giuseppe Tellini. I do want to move up, though, to Sam Spinale, who is starting to drop back from Nick Vaughan-Roberts, and Ian De Vries and Manuel Lucchetta as well in the process. I actually just want to ride on board. I want to see just how much is Sam Spinale able to close in from the slipstream. Oh, that was Nick Vaughan-Roberts really getting up onto the grass on corner egg entry for the final corner, as we will start lap 15 of the race. 14 done and many more to go here at Okayama. And Sam Spinale back within half a second of Nick Vaughan-Roberts. So the slipstream does seem to be effective, but not quite effective enough for an easy overtake. That being said, I don't know if you really want to overtake. I don't know if you want to be leading the train. For anyone who likes birds, it's kind of like when birds migrate. The birds, they take turns to lead the formation, because the bird who is leading the formation is the one who hits the wind first, and then he breaks, you know, the wind for all of the other birds behind him. And all of the other birds behind him are very happy because they have a much easier time at flying because they're running into less wind. And that's what you see birds when they migrate and when they fly as a flock. They fly in a V formation, each one breaking the wind for the subsequent bird, and so on and so forth, and they can punch a hole through the wind as a collective, and they take turns to switch between them. They'll start one of them sitting towards the front, and then later they'll switch with someone at the back, and they'll rotate around. However, unlike birds, racing drivers are very greedy. They don't want to be nice to their fellow drivers. They don't want to be nice to their fellow birds. They want to make their fellow birds do all the work. Their fellow drivers do all the work. So they're happy sometimes to sit behind. But at the same time, drivers are also very self-centered. And while they want to allow the other drivers to do all the hard work, they also want to have all the glory, and they want to be the ones that have P1 next to their name and have the clean air. I don't really think dirty air affects you significantly on this game. I don't know if it does in the Skip Barbers. I'm a bit of a Mazda 1 trick myself, and I've always been rather incapable of telling and identifying the effects of dirty air. I just go slow and think that there's something wrong with me or something wrong with my car. So for Sam Spinale, he is more than happy to be the back driver, the back bird in the flock, in the formation, and just save up his fuel as we mentioned before. Try to go that 1, maybe even 2 laps longer than the likes of Manuel Lucchetta or Ian De Vries, who were the 2 drivers who were leading at the start of the race. That is actually Manuel Lucchetta and Ian De Vries battling. Ian De Vries will have the outside as they head down into Revolver Corner. Ian De Vries now on the outside down into Piper as well, but not quite going to be able to get the better exit. Could have a little think, but no, he's just going to slot right back on into the slipstream. As honestly, it's like these things are go-karts. It reminds me back of racing in the TKMs. You're seeing that under brakes, the rear end just steps out slightly. And it really takes me back to the old days of racing in the TKMs. where you would want to just absolutely stamp on the brake pedal, get the back end just to step out a little bit, helps to get that front end turned in, which always helps in karts because you have a locked rear differential, so your rear wheels have to turn at the same speed, and as a result, the only real way to get the back end to move, to come out, and to be able to turn is to effectively make it slide. And into some of the hard braking zones, we are seeing that from Manuel Luqueta, your class and race leader here at Okayama. Ian De Vries will hold tight. Now we're back onto the back straight, and this is where Ian De Vries was able to almost find a way through on Manuel Luqueta last time round. Let's see if he can do it this time round. He slots into the slipstream, he pulls over to the inside. Manuel Luqueta will not defend, and this time round Ian De Vries is able to pull off the move nice and cleanly. So these two just taking it in turns then to run at the front of the field, taking it in turn to lead the flock of drivers. Say a flock, it's 4 drivers strong at the moment. 14 seconds to Daniele Forgerini. And again, that's not even necessarily because Daniele Forgerini is slower. That could just be because he doesn't have the effect of the slipstream. He's not running in the group of cars, and as a result, he's having to do all the work himself and is losing time in the process. And this is something else that I would like to bring up, and something that you may see in terms of strategies. I'll just hold that though, because Ian De Vries may not have got the best exit out of the final corner. You can still see that puff of dirt, that puff of dust in the background that got kicked up from Ian De Vries. But he does hold on to the lead on the run down towards turn 1. And there again, you can see Ian De Vries, when he's in the lead, he just tends to run much wider than everyone else through T1. We saw it before, I commented on it before, and right as I did, Ian De Vries then kind of lost the position, so we weren't really able to see it in full effect. But now I'll do my best to keep an eye on it. But back to what I was saying with regards to strategy, we may be seeing some different strategies coming through. We already talked about how the likes of Sam Spinale may be able to stay out for 1-2 laps longer due to just being sat in the tow, being able to lift and coast more than any of the others. But we may see the likes of Ian De Vries and Manuel Luqueta go for an undercut. And what we mean by an undercut is that you're trying to pit a few laps earlier than the car ahead. And the reason why you do this, usually you do it when you're switching tyres in the pit stops, because it means that you get a fresh set of tyres on, and on that fresh set of tyres, you are able to utilize the grip of the tyres to be able to push. But as has been mentioned in the YouTube chat, we're probably not expecting to see tyre changes. So all that will happen is after you pit, you are adding on fuel, your car becomes heavy and you become slower. So the undercut is not really likely, because you won't be able to find any time on the undercut and you'll actually lose time. And the reason why the undercut could have been good is because if you can get the undercut off, if you can pull a second or two after your pit stop, you may find yourself sufficiently far enough ahead that you don't give slipstream to the cars behind, and that you can break away from the train of cars behind you. And then once that happens, you can drive your own race and drive off into the sunset. The critical part is that you're able to break away. You're able to break away from that slipstream. But from what we've seen, the slipstream effect kind of is easily a second. If you're within a second of the car ahead, you will be picking up that slipstream and you will be able to close back in. And that slipstream effect may even go up to something like 1.5 seconds. So you would have to find an almighty undercut, or you'd have to have a lot of confidence in your pace to think that you can pull off an undercut with a full tank of fuel after a pit stop. As Manuel Luqueta looks to the inside, and once again we're seeing these top 2 drivers trading positions every couple of laps. They're not looking to really battle each other, they're just looking to switch positions every now and then, take turns running in the front of the pack, and we're probably going to be seeing this change of lead every couple of laps until the pit stops do come into play. And we will only really see defending between drivers, defending between cars, once we get into that final half an hour, that final 20 minutes. And that's when the gloves come off. That's when the drivers know that their tyres can go to the very end from that point onwards. That being said, we may still be seeing pit stops coming through. And the reason for this is, while the tyres can make it to the end of the race, something to consider is the fact that your tyres can be changed effectively for free if you can change the tyres within the length of however long it takes to add on fuel. So let's say it takes 10 seconds to change your tyres. If it takes 20 seconds to change your fuel, your stop will still be 20 seconds long. If it took 25 seconds to change your tyres and 20 seconds to add on fuel, your stop would be 25 seconds. The time does not add up. It's just whichever is the longest amount is however long you're in the pits for. So, if that is the case, we may see drivers change tyres anyway because it's a free stop. You can put some fresh tyres on the car, and that's never a bad thing. Another thing to remember is, I'm not sure if this is the case with the Spec Racer Fords. I don't know if this is the case with the Skip Barbers. It probably will be with the Spec Racer Fords because it is the case with the Mazdas. On some cars in iRacing, you change one side of the tyres and then the other side of the tyres. Essentially what the game's doing is it's jacking up one side of the car. It's lifting one side of the car off the ground to change the tyres. It lowers it, then it lifts up the other side of the car and changes those tyres. But with open wheel cars, I think it changes all of the tyres at the same time. Because what you would see for something like the Spec Racer Fords is that on one stop, drivers can change the left-hand side tyres, not the right-hand side, just the left-hand side tyres, because it would take 10 seconds to change each side of tyres. So they'll change one side, and then in the next stop, they'll change the other side of tyres. That way they can at least improve the quality, the freshness of their tyres without adding on any extra time to their pit stop. Now, the winner Schnitzel's 3 car of Foreign Arabian has kind of closed back in on to their teammate of Austin Winner in the number 33, the Max Verstappen mobile, I think we could call it. It's got blue on it. It's kind of like a Red Bull, but it doesn't look like a Red Bull car, to be honest. And we'll see whether the Foreign Arabian will find a way through on his teammate or whether he's just going to slot in behind. There does seem to be some damage on the front right of Foreign Arabian's car. And I wonder if he can get that changed in the pit stop. Hopefully he can, even if it would take, 10 seconds or so to get it repaired. It might be worth it. But then again, it might only be optional repairs. It might not be a mandatory repair that he has to undergo. And as I say that, Sam Spinale closed in momentarily on Nick Vaughan-Roberts. It's still these top 4 leading the way, and then 15.5 seconds down to Daniele Forgerini, who has Giuseppe Tellini on his tail as they make their way down into Revolver, subsequently into Piper. So we've only got 3 real battles going on right now. We've got our top 4, which we were just looking at. We've got this battle for P6 between the DRS Wave Italy and the SPM Racing Team. And then we've got the 2 Winner Schnitzel's cars, your racer leaders, or your class leaders, I should say, in the Spec Racer Ford class. Aside from that, nobody else is really close enough or within a second of somebody else's. As I say that, what has happened here to the 246 car? I just want to have a rewind. Was there contact? Okay, no. I thought for a second there was a bit of contact. Maybe they had made a mistake. I thought they were running a little bit slowly, but it seems that that is not the case. They're running perfectly fine. Wait, are the Spec Racer Fords supposed to have rear wings? No, they're not. Okay. I was just thinking for a second. Wait, there's no rear wing on that car. And sometimes you do look at cars and you just think a rear wing kind of belongs there. But not on these. They do on the Radicals, if I'm not mistaken. And the Spec Racer Fords do look, I guess, somewhat similar to the old Radical SR8s, I believe they're called. Still though, Manuel Lucchetta leading the race from Ian De Vries, Nick Vaughan-Roberts and Sam Spinale completing the top 4 quartet of drivers. And these guys have been the top 4 in some order. It has always been Nick Vaughan-Roberts and Sam Spinale in P3 and P4. But Manuel Lucchetta and Ian De Vries have been trading places, I think, at least 3 times so far in the race. And they've always been pretty much within a second of each other from the opening lap until now. As we start lap 23 of the race. 40 minutes pretty much completed now. We still have quite a way to go here at Okayama. Giuseppe Tellini on the back of Daniele Forgerini. Not able to find a way through down into turn 1. I think that is Claudio Vacalebre up ahead from the Ludum Racing, the number 1 car that was involved in the opening lap incident. Yes, indeed it is. It is Claudio. And he's not had a good race so far. I don't think it was his fault. Either way, it's for the good old stewards to decide who was at fault. I didn't really fully see it. We did take a brief look at a replay. I think it was contact between himself and the winner Schnitzel's car. Different classes as well. They're always painful to see when cars from separate classes are involved in an incident. You always just think, what was the need for it? It does seem here at Okayama not the easiest track to be able to find a way through on. But then again, I think just a lot of drivers just working together and trying to work their way up the order. Don't forget, if any drivers do want to jump on in for a quick interview, feel free to do so. And to those tuning in on YouTube, let me know. Just drop a message down in the chat. Who are you here to support? Your predictions, whatever it may be. Even if you want to tell me what you had for dinner. I'm trying to think now what I had for dinner. I don't think I've eaten dinner yet. I had a rather large lunch. I had some shepherd's pie, as well as some grilled chicken, which was absolutely fantastic. And it was a rather large meal, so for dinner, I didn't actually have dinner. We made pancakes. It was weird. I had pancakes and a cake, and that's kind of stuffed me, as well as a lot of fruit. Some good old mangoes and strawberries coming into play. And I've not eaten since. So I'm actually, now that I bring it up, I'm actually starting to feel rather peckish. And I blame everyone on YouTube, you know. I said, let me know what you had for dinner. And then now I've realized I haven't had my dinner. Might be time for after this race. It'll be midnight once this race does come to a close. Might need to grab myself some food and maybe watch a good old movie before I go to bed. Maybe even rewatch the final laps of this race, because I have a feeling that those top 4 are very even on pace, and they're going to be sitting nose to tail right until the very end. In the Spec Racer Ford class, it is still Winner Schnitzel's 2 from Winner Schnitzel's 3. Honestly, that front right damage to the bodywork, I think it's just bodywork damage to that number 2 car. Very lucky is a Florence Arabian that whatever damage that was has not affected his tyre. I think in real life he might have got some rubbing between his front right tyre and the bodywork, the carbon fibre of the car, which can very often lead to a puncture. And most likely would have just been involved, maybe the car in front just braking a bit early and his front right just runs into the rear of the car and just causes the carbon fibre just to crush it into itself somewhat. I think the only damage will be maybe a very, very slight aero effect on the car. But I don't think the arrows are too... The arrow is too important for the Spec Racer Fords. And maybe, at most, it'll be costing him 1/2 a lap. But sitting in the slipstream of his teammate Austin Winner, it shouldn't even be affecting him by that much. So, Giuseppe Tellini, actually, I just closed in onto Daniele Forgerini. And we're going to ride on board with the Italian as they make their way out of Piper Corner. Oh, you can see how much you've got to throw the car in, and honestly, you can almost feel, despite us ourselves not being the one who's holding on to the steering, us not being the ones who are feeling the force feedback, but you can almost feel that the car is on the verge of just sliding out. But you do just have to have faith in your car that it will stick and it will not run wide or anything of the sort. Franco Ruggeri actually just did a pit stop on the last lap, I think, unless my timing sheets are deceiving me. It says it was a 22 seconds in the pit lane, a 1.6 second stop, so that would have been a fast pit stop or fast repair coming through for the Italian. Meanwhile, the winner Schnitzels of David Gaspers is still in the pits. He's been in the pits for 34 minutes. I think he has retired from the race, as one of the Spec Racer Fords gets well out of the way of these two and their battle. Giuseppe Tellini feels somewhat closer than he did on previous laps, but there you go, there's that lifting and coasting coming through. This is an endurance race, no need to overfight, over-battle. If you're Giuseppe Tellini, you don't know what could potentially happen later in the race. There could be a mistake from the top four, and all of a sudden this battle that is for P5 could become a battle for P4. Or perhaps, you know, if they battle, it could be Franco Ruggeri, who's 21 seconds down the road, who is able to close in. Last lap round, Franco Ruggeri actually matching the lap time of Giuseppe Tellini, and a couple of tenths quicker than Daniele Forgerini. By the way, all three of them about 4 tenths or so off the pace of the leading four drivers. And as Giuseppe Tellini is actually very close this time around, I'll be honest, to Daniele Forgerini, but yeah, there you go, Daniele Forgerini able to hold on to the position as Giuseppe just, again, lifting and coasting into the corners. No need to overly push the car. And right as I say that, runs a little bit wide on the entry into Williams. Williams being a turn 2. Through turn 3, which is called the Moss S. I don't know why it's called the Moss S when it's called one corner, because if it's an S, technically it's 2 corners. And there you can hear the tyre squeal. We ride on board then. Or as we ride on board with Daniele Forgerini. Giuseppe Tellini on the back end. And there you can see Giuseppe Tellini just lifting out of it nice and early. Again, saving fuel, saving time, or saving potential time in his pit stop. So last time round, Franco Ruggeri is second quicker than these two. As apparently Sam Spinell put in a 1:10.0, so I have no idea how he quite managed that one. I'm going to guess it was a slight glitch in the timing screens. Although on my other timing it says he did a 43.8, which seems a lot more reasonable. Lap 28 then of the race. Nearly 48 minutes completed as we are approaching the 1/3 mark in the race. Tell you what, Sam Spinale had really closed in onto the back of Nick Vorhan-Roberts as the 246. That is Nico Schuck in the MechPom Sim Racing Spec Racer Ford. Does get out of the way of these guys. And up ahead, you can see Johan Buitenga and David Waters battling for P4 in the SRF class. P4, P5 in the SRF class, P11 and P12 overall. Ooh, I thought for a second that was a lot of curb used by Sam Spinale, and he used a lot of curb and grass on corner exit. But able to keep the car planted, and the car will not step out on him. As he is able to keep it on the black stuff. Now let's see whether these four affect this battle up ahead for P4 in the SRF class. The 260 of Johan Buitenga gets well out of the way. But now, actually, where will David Waters allow Manuel Luqueta through? Manuel Luqueta. I don't know if that's Spanish or Italian. I feel like it's Italian. I think we've got a lot of Italians. But Manuel feels somewhat Spanish. Now, everyone's kind of going to go down the inside into the corner. 735 has to leave the door open. And actually, Nick Vorhan-Roberts and Sam Spinale have kind of dropped back from this battle. See whether they can close back in, but there you can see actually Sam Spinale trying to pick up some slipstream from the Spec Racer Ford. As we're going to hope the SRF doesn't outbrake himself. And indeed he does not. Sam Spinale will be able to cleanly make his way back up to P4. So David Waters has really dropped, or has really been able to drop Johan Buitenga, courtesy of these top four. And now it's actually Nico Schuck who is on the back of Johan Buitenga. Battle for P5 in the SRF class. And I feel that Nico Schuck does not want to hang around. In terms of Nico Schuck's raw pace, his fast lap is a 46.6. Johan Buitenga's fast lap a 47.2. David Waters' fast lap a 47.3. So I do think that Nico Schuck does want to get his way through. I think he will be confident in his pace and confident in his ability to close in onto David Waters. And then after that, maybe even close up onto Bobby West. But Bobby West a further 23 seconds up the road. But then again, it's endurance racing. And, well, we've got over 2 hours remaining. So plenty of the time for Nico Schuck and whoever his teammate in the MechPom Sim Racing car is to close up onto West Tech Esports Racing. And maybe even onto the Winner Schnitzel's cars. One of the most difficult parts with the Spec Racer Fords, under braking. You need to get that brake bias absolutely spot on. But Nico Schuck has got his acceleration point spot on and he's got his exit spot on as he'll go down the inside of Johan Buitenga. Has a bit of a lock-up. I'm not quite sure if that was a front or rear lock-up. I would assume the front end. Because when the rear locks up, it usually really wants to step out on you. It doesn't seem like Nico Schuck lost too much time there. Johan Buitenga drops down to P13, P6 in the SRF class. And now Nico Schuck can look to close on into David Waters. Last time round, 1.5 seconds, or actually 1.7 seconds quicker than the Brackman Motorsports car. Oh, Nick Vorhan-Roberts. What has happened here? Oh, we've got a pit stop. So pit stop coming through just before the hour mark. Now, this means that if we're getting pit stops at 53 minutes into the race, or 52 minutes into the race, it's at least 3 stops. These guys cannot get away with 2 stops. However, if you are someone like Sam Spinale, who's been able to save fuel, if he can go another 5 laps, which I doubt, I think he could maybe go an extra 2 laps, he might be able to get away with a 3-stop, or he might be able to get away with a 2-stop instead of a 3-stop. This is critical because this is where we find out how much fuel everyone has been saving. And for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they've saved the least amount of fuel of the top 3. They've had to pit before everyone else. Benny Simonson is in the car, and he will feed out as that's the Forza Racing team that... No, it's not Forza Racing that come past. Forza Racing are into the pits. So, for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it was a 31.5 second stop in the pit lane. 31.5. For Daniele Camareri in the Forza Racing team, it's actually longer, 34.4 seconds. So presumably a little bit more fuel being added into the car for Daniele. And what about for SPM Racing team that has Efraim Posati at the wheel? I think it was Efraim Posati who did qualifying and then they switched drivers. I've already forgotten who was the previous driver for SPM. As there you have it, Manuel Luqueta into the pits. This is what we expected because Mivana Sim Racing, they were in the lead of the race for quite a while. We saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the pits for slightly longer. So 31.5 seconds was the stop at timer for Benny Simonson and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles car and Arjen de Vries. And there's 5 minutes before the hour. If Sam Spinell can go 2 laps longer, he might be able to do a 2-stop. 31.5 seconds is the pit stop time to beat then. And here is Benny Simonson. 26 seconds in the pits, 27, 28 for Manuel Luqueta. 32.7. So Manuel Luqueta will lose an entire second in the pit lane. And there's Manuel Luqueta coming out of the pits now. And they come out pretty much side by side, neck and neck. So that 1 second that was gained by Manuel Luqueta, or that 1 second that was gained by Benny Simonson, he lost it all on his outlap. So there you have it. And that's what we were talking about. The overcut is so much more effective. You can save so much time with the overcut. That lighter fuel load, you can get a more ideal lap time. So now I'm starting to think that if the likes of Sam Spinell and Nick Vaughan-Roberts can pull something off, Sam Spinell into the pit, so it's Nick Vaughan-Roberts in the Two Fools Racing car who's been able to save the most fuel out of the top of 4. Do not forget, guys, these guys would not be jumping on into the pits unless they were about to run out of fuel. They will be taking the car, the fuel load, as far as they can. Now, I have a feeling that Sam Spinell might be able to pull the overcut off onto Manuel Luqueta. I don't know if he can do it onto Benny Simonson. But that overcut is pretty crucial. And it's pretty effective. 6/10 between Benny Simonson and Manuel Luqueta. And don't forget, this is Benny Simonson's first race stint. He did do qualifying. He was the man who was able to pick up a pole for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that is going to be not a great stop for Sam Spinell. He's in there for a very long time. 46, 47, 48 seconds. He has lost 20 seconds plus in the pit lane. And dearie me, what has happened to Sam Spinell? Did he speed into the pits? No, because speeding into the pits, I believe, is a stop-go penalty. A 30-second stop-go penalty. And Sam Spinell has lost a whole bunch of time. 1 minute 14 seconds. What is happening to Team NAN? Sodium nitride, I'd want to call it. Well, if Sam Spinell's teammate is in the chat, I would love to hear from you as to what is happening to Team NAN, because he has lost a whole minute in the pit stop, and this is what we were talking about. Endurance racing, anything can happen, and that is Sam Spinell's race. well, pretty much over and done, as that's Nick Vaughan-Roberts now coming into the pit. So Nick Vaughan-Roberts has effectively lapped Sam Spinell because his pit box is just at one spot ahead. So now the question is, can we see the overcut being pulled off by Nick Vaughan-Roberts? He's gone 2 laps longer than Manuel Lucchetta, 3 laps longer than Benny Simonsen. And if he's able to come out of the pits behind these two, he's going to be able to save even more fuel. In terms of this pit stop time, it should be exactly the same. Let's see, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33.0. So a few tenths are longer than Manuel Lucchetta. And out of the pits comes Nick Vaughan-Roberts. And he has lost time with the overcut. So the overcut does seem to be slower here at Okayama. Now, critically, Nick Vaughan-Roberts is 1.5 seconds behind your top two. Sam Spinell's out of the race. Sam Spinell is out. 2 minutes 41 seconds in the pits, and Sam Spinell has pulled the plug. Well, that is dreadful, dreadful to hear. And something that is not going too well is the fact that Nick Vaughan-Roberts, I think, is too far back right now to be getting the effects of the tow from the two drivers up ahead. He needs them to battle. He needs them to switch positions. And if you're Nirvana Sim Racing or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you do not want to battle. You want to work together to ensure that Nick Vaughan-Roberts is unable to close back in. Because if Nick Vaughan-Roberts can close back in, he's going to be saving fuel. And then that 3-lap overcut he was able to do, that's going to become a 6-lap overcut in the next stint. And then, if he's able to kind of get back onto you again for that final stop, that third and final pit stop, he's going to save about 10 seconds in the pits. And that is going to be a whopping pit stop advantage. 1.9 seconds is Nick Vaughan-Roberts. I don't know if the tyres were changed. I think they would have been. And if that was the case, then these would be colder tyres. So it would take some time for Nick Vaughan-Roberts to get them up to pace. But struggling is Nick at the moment just to stick with those two up ahead. And this is the risk that Nick Vaughan-Roberts ran. This is the risk that you take to try to pull off a different strategy. You're no longer in that pack of cars. You're no longer getting the slipstream from the cars ahead. And don't forget, Benny Simonsen and Manuel Lucchetta, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Nirvana Sim Racing, are the two quicker teams. They are the two quicker drivers, and they are what allowed Nick Vaughan-Roberts and Sam Spinell to stick with them, to be able to put in those mid to high 43s and pull away from the likes of DRS Wave Italy and the Forza Racing team. And Nick Vaughan-Roberts has almost dropped an entire second on this lap alone. 2.1 seconds. Okay, Nick Vaughan-Roberts closing back in somewhat to the two up ahead. We'll see what this lap is. High 43s for Benny Simonsen and Nirvana Sim Racing. 43.7, 43.8, 44.0 for Nick Vaughan-Roberts. So 2 tenths slower than Manuel Lucchetta. But he just needs to keep his head down and just try to close back in. Those two up ahead just have, if they try to go down the inside, if they try to go side by side from turn 5 down to the exit of Piper, Nick Vaughan-Roberts is back in this race. Spec Racer Fords still out. I think we expected them to have slightly larger fuel tanks than the Skip Barbers. Tell you what, man, we'll look at that. He's right on the rear of Benny Simonson. Yeah, I think Nick Vaughan Roberts does not quite have the pace to stick with these guys. 2.4 seconds behind now. Ooh, bit of a correction coming through from Manuel Lucata. Under the brakes, down into the hairpin. Now Fredman. Through Hobson. Manuel Lucata is looking quick. Nick Vaughan Roberts seems to be slightly quicker than these two in the final sector because he's closed in by 0.2 in the final couple of, or in the last couple of corners. See if he closes even more through turn 11. And indeed he is. He brings the gap down to 2.1 seconds. Manuel Lucata, there you can hear the lifting coast coming through. So last time round, Nick Vaughan Roberts, a tenth slower than Manuel Lucata, but at the same time, 0.2 quicker than Benny Simonson. So as long as he's faster than one of the two up ahead every lap, he'll be able to kind of stick and stay somewhat close and stay within those, what is it, 2.3 seconds to Nirvana Sim Racing and 2.5 seconds to Benny Simonson. There's the lifting coast from Lucata. You can really see these cars just sliding and being a little bit slippery over the curbs. Again, no real downforce on these cars. Yes, you've got that little rear wing, you've got a little front wing. As I'd like to say, they're more there for fashion over function. I'm sure that's not quite the case, but it somewhat reminds me of when you see cars out on the road that have a rear spoiler on some, Volkswagen Golf, as if that does anything. But yeah, not much downforce on these cars at all. It all comes down to the mechanical grip of the car. And remember, they're not running with slick tyres. They're slightly grooved. And that's even more grip that goes down the drain. Okay, Nick Vaughan Roberts, 2.0 seconds behind now. So he's gained 1/10 on this last lap. He's gone 300ths quicker than Manuel Lucata and 200 slower than Benny Simonson. So he's matching the pace of these top two, but he needs to gain. He needs to find a time. Because if he doesn't, then, well, after the next stop, I think he might be even further behind. And then it's all going to come down to that huge, huge advantage that he may have by having to put less fuel in the car in the final stint. I wonder how he'll play it, whether he'll look to pit a couple of laps later and put less fuel in the car, or pit a bit earlier and put less fuel in the car. Either way, he's putting less fuel in the car. What you do tend to see in iRacing is because you can't select the exact amount of fuel you put in, you have to select predetermined amounts, as Benny Simonson really getting onto the grass on entry and on exit. And he's really all over the place, but somehow it's quick. And how he has not lost time, I do not know. In fact, Nick Vaughan Roberts has lost time. He's lost nearly 1.5 seconds. And he's now 3.4 seconds behind Manuel Lucata. And that is not good news for the Two Fools Racing car. But back to what I was saying, you can't select the exact amount of fuels to put in. You have to select predetermined amounts. So sometimes to get the most ideal pit stop off, to save the most amount of time in your pit stop, you would have to pit rather than at the end of your fuel stint when you have a little bit of fuel left in the car. So you can put in a full tank of fuel and calculate what lap you'd want to pit such that a full tank of fuel could take you to the end of the race. Spec Racer Ford up ahead. Manuel Lucata won't be really looking to use this as an opportunity to find a way through. He's just going to keep on working with Benny Simonson to pull further and further away from Nick Vaughan Roberts. They know those two falls racing could prove to be a bit of a challenge in the final stint with that 3-lap advantage in terms of fuel. Those 3 laps of fuel, or probably about, what, 6 litres? Maybe 3 and a bit litres that will be saved in the next pit stop, which amounts to a few seconds. I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly what the fueling rate is for these cars and how quickly the fuel can get put into the cars. Of course, the longer it takes to put fuel in the cars, then the more time you'd gain by having 3 litres less of fuel that you need. David Waters into the pits for the Brackman racing car. And I think that is one of our first pit stops in the Spec Racer Ford. Dominique Barou, while he has done one stop, it was only a 1-second stop in the pit lane, so it was just a quick fix to the car. None of the other Spec Racer Fords have pitted yet. Anyway. Let's see how long it takes for David Waters to complete his pit stop in the 735 car. Took around 32 seconds for the Skip Barbers. And for the Spec Racer Fords, 46 litres of fuel. So it seems that both cars consume the same amount of fuel, give or take, but a larger tank for the Spec Racer Fords. And they're able to go 1 hour and 10 minutes at the very least. So they will only be doing 2 pit stops. So 1 more pit stop left for them. We've done 70 minutes of the race so far. 70 minutes of 180. So we're getting close to the halfway point, the 1.5 hour mark. Hope everyone is having a good evening. For those of you tuning in, this is the 3 hours of Okayama for the Skip Barber and the Spec Racer Ford Endurance Cup. And we are 1 hour and 10 minutes into the 3-hour race. Benny Simonson leads from Manuel Lucetta, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from Vivana Sim Racing. The two Fools are racing as well as a Team NAN. They were on the back of these two, but something happened to Sam Spinale during his pit stop that has seen him out of the race. And Nick Vaughan Roberts, after his pit stop, he dropped out of that kind of slipstream zone, and since that point he's dropped further and further back, unable to match the pace of these two. He played the risk to run longer, to have the advantage for the final stint, but as a result he just didn't have the pace to match these two during his in-laps, during his final laps, and it has costed him. You can see Nick Vaughan Roberts just in the corner of your shot in the 111 car. These two have been nose to tail all race. They've switched positions a few times, but it has just been a couple of times. Aside from that, they've just kind of worked together, and they're still working together just to make sure Nick Vaughan Roberts is outside of any striking distance. And to be honest, you can expect them to work together all the way until you have about 20 minutes left in the race, and then at that point, with 20 minutes left, with around, I guess that'd be 15 laps or so, 14, 13 laps. That's when they'll really start to push. That's when they'll really start to give it everything they have. Benny Simonson running a little bit wide through outward curve. And Manuel Lucata with the slipstream just goes down the inside. Nothing too difficult, nothing too spicy. They've been switching positions for a while as we're seeing Bobby West diving on into the pits and will relinquish FM Posati in his skip Barber through. He currently finds himself about 37 seconds behind the Forza TV car. Lost actually 7/10 to them last time round, so not the greatest for him. How's Nico Schuck doing? He's still yet to pit, and him and Bobby West maybe have the potential to close in onto the winner Schnitzels. The winner Schnitzels of Foreign Sarabian has pitted, 43-second pit stop. Nefan Pazzatia actually had a 44-second pit stop, so had about 10 seconds worth of repairs that he had to serve. Benny Simonson still running pretty close to Manuel Lucata, as we would expect. Bobby West has made his pit stop. He's come out 14 seconds behind Foreign Sarabian. And Timo Schuck, who was the man who was... Oh, sorry, Tony Schuck, not Timo Schuck. Tony Schuck, who was the man who was kind of flying before the pit stops, closing in onto Bobby West. Finds himself 31 seconds behind. We'll see whether he can close on in as he's making his way out of the pit stops now. Out of the pit stop now. Also seeing Johan Buitenga also pitting. 45 seconds stopped. So roughly the same as all of his other Spec Racer Ford competitors. And now we're seeing Benny Simonson diving on into the pits. Now that is surprising. This is very surprising indeed. So, because they've been able to do 50 minutes on one stint, that means that they have one splash and dash that they can use. And Benny Simonson is using his splash and dash here. Benny Simonson has decided that he doesn't want to, you know, take this car all the way. He's been I don't know whether he was running on a full tank of fuel before this pit stop, or if he's now out of fuel, if he just used his splash and dash and was unable to pull it off. And there you go, 17 seconds in the pit. It's a very, very short pit stop for Benny Simonson. About 15 seconds shorter than what could be expected. So the question is, does Manuel Lucata match this? Or does Manuel Lucata go on his own strategy, and then in the final stint of the race, that can be the point where Manuel Lucata then looks to come back in strong and jump Benny Simonson? And it all comes down to this. Does Manuel Lucata think that he has more pace than Benny Simonson? Now, Benny Simonson is a man who picked up pole. And Benny Simonson is the man who has decided to go for this strategy. So, at the very least, Benny Simonson thinks that he can pull this off. He thinks he has the pace. How much bravery does Manuel Lucata have? Because if he isn't feeling confident enough, this strategy will not work. Does he come into the pits? No, he doesn't. So we are having a split strategy between Benny Simonson. And actually, Benny Simonson, okay, this could be bad for him. This could be really bad because Benny Simonson is stuck behind Daniele Camareri. And he needs to find a way through quickly. Because Daniele Camareri will be running at around, maybe even up to a second, a lap slower than Manuel Lucata. Emmanuel Lucata last time around, a 44.0. We'll see what Daniele Camilleri can pull out. You can see how quickly Benny Simonson's closing up. He needs to get the exit on this corner. He's got the slipstream, and this should be a straightforward pass for Benny Simonson. He'll look to the inside, and the Aston Martin Works driver pulls off the move, easy as you like. Camilleri puts in a 44.5, so he lost half a second to Lucata last time round, and Benny Simonson probably would have lost 2-3 tenths or so. Now he needs to hope that the Forger TV racing team doesn't try anything, doesn't try to slide their way back through, doesn't try to fight this at all, and just lets Benny Simonson get on with his race and pull away. Now, Benny Simonson will probably have slightly less pace than Manuel Lucata right now, because he is, he has slightly more fuel in the car. And we don't think that there was a tyre change. Apparently, according to Roger, who is the second driver, or the other driver in the 2-Falls racing car, there's going to be no tyre changes. The tyres can go all the way to the end. So, Manuel Lucata, 43.8 last time round. And Benny Simonson makes his way through Mike Knight and down into turn 11. Lap 46 of the race, as we get closer and closer to the halfway point. Now let's see what Benny Simonson can pull through. Wants to be within a few tenths. 43.801, despite overtaking Manuel Lucata. Yes, he had the slipstream, but he's able to go quicker than Lucata. And considering that Benny Simonson has not changed tyres, if he has not changed tyres, this is insane. Because now, when Lucata does pit, it's going to be a longer pit stop for Lucata. He's going to come out behind Benny Simonson, and he would have lost time. And then Benny Simonson is going to be on a lower fuel load than Lucata. And that's going to be the point where Benny can really pull away. And during that final pit stop, ensure that he comes out ahead of Lucata. I think Lucata made a mistake. I think Lucata should have matched the strategy from Benny Simonson. Because if they were on the same strategy, I think there was a chance, there was a hope for Lucata. But Lucata, I mean, at the end of the day, Nirvana Sim Racing, they believe that they can pull off this strategy. So we have to have faith. We have to see what they have in store. And if they can pull anything out of the bag. Ian De Vried is in the chat. We haven't changed tyres, he says. Okay. No new tyres, so it's just a higher fuel load for Benny Simonson. And he's lapping quickly. 43.697 last time round for Manuel Lucata. Now, was that 43.8 for Benny Simonson? Was it luck? Was it just due to the slipstream he had from Daniele Camilleri? Or can he replicate that? Here we go, across the line. 43.698, it was not luck, only 1,000 slower than Manuel Lucata. That is a good time for Benny Simonson with the higher tank of fuel. And if he can do that, if he can literally match the pace per hundredth, per thousandth to Manuel Lucata, this is fantastic. Okay, I do apologize, guys. For some reason, the chat on my phone hasn't been working. So I didn't see some of the previous messages. Actually, no, it was working, but for some reason I can't... On my phone, I can't see Ian De Vried's messages. But on my YouTube thing on PC, I can. By the way, we've got a bit of a race on our hands, haven't we? to be honest, I think that Benny Simonsen has pretty much done it. I think he's got the pace to pull it off, and I think Manuel Lucchetta has lost the brief window he had to match Benny Simonsen's pit stop. And now, if he pits... Okay, there is only one way around this right now for Manuel Lucchetta, which is if he pits in a couple of laps and it does not fill the car fully. That way he'll come out of the pits with roughly the same amount of fuel as Benny Simonsen, and it should only be a second behind, and hopefully within that slipstream range. I personally think that is the best bet for Manuel Lucchetta. I think he should pit at the next window. So essentially, when I say next window, on iRacing, you can either fill up defined quantities of fuel. So it could be 5 liters, it could be 5 liters, 9 liters, 15 liters. He couldn't have, if he pitted right after Benny Simonsen, he wouldn't have been able to get that exact same fuel on board, and therefore he would have dropped behind because he'd have to put in more fuel than Benny Simonsen. And if he tried to put in the same amount of fuel, it wouldn't have essentially been the right amount. So he wants to pit at the next set, so when it would drop from, let's say, 15 liters to 9 liters, he wants to wait however many laps those 6 liters are, pit at 9 liters so that he doesn't have a full tank of fuel, he doesn't overfuel the car, and he comes out of the pit with the exact same amount of fuel as Benny Simonsen. So he would have effectively nullified Benny Simonsen's strategy and will still be within that slipstream window. We'll see though whether that does come through. But again, if Manuel Lucchetta thinks that he has the pace, if he thinks he can match what this man Benny Simonsen is doing, then go for it. Manuel Lucchetta has crossed the line, and he has put in a 43.9, pardon me. Benny Simonsen then, let's see what he can pull out. 43.715 at 2 more tenths. This is why I think Manuel Lucchetta needs to pit sooner rather than later. So otherwise, he's in a spot of bother. The other thing is, Manuel Lucchetta doesn't necessarily know exactly how much fuel Benny Simonsen has put in. Because remember how I was saying that each of the teams will have one splash and dash that they can use? There is a possibility, there is a slight possibility, and I'm pretty sure Ian De Vries will not confirm this because this would be leaking their strategy. But there is a slight possibility that Benny Simonsen and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are going for a double splash and dash. So they're not going for a full out splash and dash, a really short splash and dash. They could be going for 2 splash and dashes. And if that is the case, Manuel Lucchetta won't necessarily know exactly how much of a splash and dash Benny Simonsen has done. What I can say though, as a commentator, I have access to that information, and I'm guessing all of the teams would, or the race engineers would, is that last stop from Benny Simonsen was 17 seconds, which is almost half the time of a normal pit stop. So they've got half a tank of fuel on board, just over half a tank of fuel. So if we say that we were expecting 50 minutes in a normal stint, we were expecting Benny Simonsen to pit within 25 minutes, maybe 28 minutes of that previous pit stop. Benny Simonsen is now on to lap 7 of his stint. And he will be able to do around about 16 laps, 16, 17 laps on this stint. And that's when he's going to dive on into the pits. But then again, he wasn't on an empty tank of fuel, so never mind that. Ignore me, he's not going to be pitting in 17 laps. Because while he did only put in 25 litres, that would have taken him possibly back up to a full tank. And I didn't actually check how many laps he did in his previous stint, so I don't fully know. Benny Simonsen, does he dive it up the inside of the number 2? No, he doesn't. Winner Schnitzels will hold on to their position. They are about to get lapped, so they should be allowing Benny Simonsen through. I don't think Benny Simonsen will be very happy about this. We'll see when he crosses the line how much time he has lost due to the winner Schnitzel's car of Foreign Sarabian. Down the inside goes Benny Simonson. Still not making it overly easy is Foreign Sarabian. Ooh, don't throw your nose in. Benny Simonson has had to leave room. I have a feeling Benny Simonson is not happy bunny after that one. So, Manuel Luqueta, last time round, a 43.8. I have a feeling this might be a 44 for Benny, because he has kind of struggled to get clear of the winner Schnitzel's car. So, Benny Simonson then will cross the line. 44.2. He's lost 4 tenths. Those last few laps, that hard work that he put in to gain some form of an advantage over Manuel Luqueta has gone down the drain. And this is one slight issue with the strategy that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have gone for. They are pitting somewhat earlier. That means that they are coming out into traffic. And don't forget, Benny Simonson is closing in onto Giuseppe Tellini. And Giuseppe Tellini won't necessarily be the easiest person to get past. They are battling for position. Sure, they're on different strategies, but it is still a battle for position. And if Giuseppe Tellini makes things difficult, it will not be helping the strategy for Benny Simonson one bit. We are 1.5 hours into the race, halfway through, give or take. Well, we're 40 seconds away from the halfway point. I'm going to say we're at halfway point, or at the halfway point. Would probably be the more grammatically correct way of saying it. And there you go, Benny Simonson. He was stuck behind one winner Schnitzel's car. And now he is stuck behind the other winner Schnitzels. This time of Austin Winner. Austin Winner Schnitzel. After who, I would imagine, the winner Schnitzel team has been named. Benny Simonson, 43.9. 43.6 for Manuel Luqueta. So, half a second, actually I think it was more about 7/10 of a second has been gained by Manuel Luqueta over Benny Simonson over the last couple of laps. But now, Benny Simonson is clear of Austin Winner. And now he can try to hunt down Giuseppe Tellini. And hopefully, if you are a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Giuseppe Tellini will not pose a challenge to Benny Simonson. I'm going to be honest. Actually, I don't know if Ian DeVries is still in the call, but Ian, the team's called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Why am I not seeing turtles on the car? I am slightly disappointed. You know, you've got to live up to the name of your team. You know, I need to see you know, Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, or Donatello somewhere on the car. You know, a little tramp stamp sticking out. But I see nothing at the moment. Okay, this time round, Manuel Luqueta at 44.7 and at 43.8 for Benny Simonson. So I'm not quite sure what's happened to Luqueta this time round, but maybe yes, back markers have happened to Luqueta, and well, he's had to get past 2 of the Spec Racer Fords, and just like Benny Simonson, who had to get past 2 Spec Racer Fords, has lost a whole bunch of time. There are 2 turtles in the car. In the car. What on earth do you mean in the car? Are you the turtles? Because if you are, I get that, but you can't have 2 turtles in the car at the same time, can you? I see no turtles. Oh, also, if you are the turtles, which turtles do you represent? You know, is Benny the is Benny Leonardo? Is he the leader of the team, as owner of the league, or creator of the race, host of the session? You say you're slow, but you still qualified on pole, you're battling for the lead, and you're faster than mere mortals like myself. So, also, you've got an Aston Martin's GT works driver in. You know, if there's one thing I hate more than people taking me out in league racing and then blaming me for it, it's people who are fast and then pretend like they're slow. But then again, in fairness, the better you are, the more you realize that you aren't actually that good. And the more you realize that you don't actually know. So, in fairness, I respect that. The slower someone says they are, the faster they actually are. Until you get to the very end of the spectrum. Like, the very, very end. Like, I don't think Max Verstappen would say that he's slow. Maybe he would. Or if someone's, like, really, really slow, then, like, if they might have enough self-awareness to know that they're slow. But one of my favorite things about humanity is people who are slow, but they think they're fast, having never done any race. And then there are people like me who can beat them. And people who know stuff about racing. And they're like, ah, you're one of those people, are you? Ha ha ha. And then you can have lots of fun with them. And there are different ways in which you can have fun with people who think that they're fast, but aren't fast, you know. You could challenge them to a race, you know, take them to your local karting center and absolutely trounce them. That's one of the best, the most satisfying ways of doing it. You could also, you know, slowly explain to them that they are completely wrong. But let's be honest, destroying them is one of the best ways. So, the story goes, at some point I was winning, this is from Ian De Vries, by the way, I was winning the 2K championship, I don't know what that is, but let's go on. Some new guy came in and he complained to me, calling me a turtle. Ever since, we called each other slow turtles. Fairs. Fair enough. At least you're not tortoises. Tortoises are much slower than turtles. I mean, turtles are smart. That they were in Finding Nemo. They knew how to ride the currents. You know, they were Aussie surfers. They knew how to get from like one side of the reef to the other and all that. That new guy wasn't Benny, but we were laughing at it as we were screwing around in that race. Not that I'm at the same pace as you, but it reminded me of one F1 league I was in. And me and one of my best friends, we were battling, as Benny Simonson and Giuseppe Tellini are battling right now. And Benny Simonson will be, you know, if he had lights on his cars, he'd be flashing. But he doesn't, so I think he'll be maybe sticking up a finger. Maybe he'll be gesturing at Giuseppe Tellini to move out of my way. We are not in the same race. I'm a pit stop ahead of you. Move, Giuseppe. Vamos, andale. Wait, no, that's Spanish. Andiamo. Lasciarmi. Leave me alone. But Giuseppe Tellini does not really care right now in his green, white, and red Italian liveried car. And surely this is where Benny Simonson finds a way through. What's this lap? 43.7, 44.1 from Manuel Lucchetta. So, Benny Simonson able to gain 4 tenths on him on this last lap, maybe somewhat courtesy of the slipstream. And now he might lose some time. But back to my story. Myself and a friend, we were dominating a league. So the league said, oh, do you want to get promoted to the tier above? And we said, oh, you know what, why not? So then we got promoted. I got taken out a few times, and I essentially lost interest, so I stopped practicing. And then I had a race where I didn't practice, and I still almost won. And I had a spin at the end of the race, and people were like, oh, you're really bad. This is why you should practice, or you don't know how to practice. It's like, come on. You know I'm not practicing. You see my pace. But enough about me and my sad times, because Benny Simonson has gone down the inside of Giuseppe Tellini and is up into P3, and now he can try to work on it, closing the gap to the next man ahead, which is Nick Vaughan-Roberts, or Nick Vaughan-Roberts. That being said, I don't really think he's going to close in on him. I think he can just try to now match the pace of Manuel Lucchetta, or, knowing Benny Simonson, try to actually close in onto Manuel Lucchetta. And honestly, the Turtles right now are rather quick, I'll be honest with you. Now, we're 1 hour, 21 minutes remaining. This is a kind of point where we are expecting Manuel Lucchetta to come into the pits. Now, the critical thing here as well is Manuel Lucchetta has not been able to sit in the slipstream of Benny Simonson, so he's not going to be able to stretch out his stint. And that could have a pretty big impact. So the 1 hour, or the 55 minutes that the likes of Two Fools Racing and Sam Spinale were able to stretch their stint out for is unlikely to happen here. We will expect Manuel Lucchetta. I'm expecting him to come into the pits either this lap or on the next lap. And then it'll be one more stop. And it will be the splash and dash for Manuel Lucchetta, either at the 1/3 point during his stint, or with about 20 minutes to go, really, or 30 minutes to go. I'm trying to work out now, wait, it's a 2K championship. Is that one of the official series, or is that a private series? I feel like I should know what it is, but my mind has gone somewhat blank right now. Last side round, Manuel Lucchetta, 43.7. Benny Simonson across the line. Probably going to be another 43.6, knowing Benny. 43.5, but never mind, it's even quicker. Another 2/10 that gets taken out of Manuel Lucchetta. Nick Vaughan-Roberts will probably be pitting in around about 6 minutes' time, because remember, he went about 3 laps longer than Manuel Lucchetta. Oh no, just Google my name, you famous person. Actually, you can do that with me as well. Ah, the Skip Barber 2K World Cup. Okay, right. Ah, Ian DeVried at Ian Dev. Ambitious technical architect, developer, sim racing. You're a... I've lost my respect for you. You're a golfer. What? Ian, you've got to teach me the ways. You've got to teach me the ways of being quick. Two fools should be known as one fool racing tonight. Great job, Nick. Roger, you need to jump in the wheel of the car. I think you can pick up a P3, right? You know, Sam Spinale's no longer in it. You guys aren't... Okay, I'm going to be honest. I don't think you guys are really in the battle for the top 2. It's just keeping Daniele Camareri at bay, and he's about 20 seconds behind. So, come on, Roger, jump in the car. Now, I'm going to stick on board with Manuel Lucchetta, because Manuel Lucchetta is going to be pitting at the end of this lap. That's my prediction. Do you think he's going to get a windshield tear off? Oh, no, 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 no. No! Manuel. Oh, dearie, dearie me. You could see that one happening. Oh, he tries to avoid, but the car ahead tries to move out of the way. I don't know. I don't think you can really blame whoever is ahead. Huh? Okay. It is the Spunky Pants. Oof. Oof, Manuel. Actually, he stayed out for one lap longer. Hello, Cogency. Nice timing to go on board. Very lucky. Very lucky indeed. Sam Spinell, great race. Sorry, I had to back out. Got a penalty in the pits, and my teammate didn't turn up, so my eyes weren't the best. You know what, Sam? I was wondering if your teammate didn't show up, because at first I thought, oh, maybe your teammate hasn't popped up and you're like requested, and then I was wondering, well, if that was the case, why didn't you jump back out? But that makes sense. I get that a lot as well. Like when you drive at night, you get that feeling like where your eyes like kind of water up and you're like blinking to try to see the screen, and things get wonky. I don't know if, I think they call it the blue light. The blue light on the screen. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So I don't blame you one jot, Sam. Very unfortunate though to see you out of the race. It looked like you were in a good battle in that top four. And I was excited to see what you'd be able to pull out. As it looked like you, I mean, you had the fuel advantage over the top two. But there we go, I guess. Ooh, FM Posati is on the back of Giuseppe Tellini. Italian versus Italian as DRS Wave Italy. We have a bit of a hiccup on the exit of the final corner. I mean, if you want, Sam, you can jump on in for a quick interview. It's getting quite lonely here in the commentary booth. I think it's getting lonely for most of the drivers out on circuit as well. Not too many battles occurring right now. As Efrem Posati is currently 1.5 seconds behind Giuseppe Tellini. Last time round, he gained 4.5 seconds on his Italian compatriot. But I think that was must have been a mistake from Giuseppe. And we'll see whether he can pull everything back together on this lap. He's got one of the Spec Racer Fords up ahead. And hopefully the SRF won't cause any issues to these two. Let's take a look at Giuseppe Tellini, and the Spec Racer Ford runs wide through Hobbs and will allow the 148 DRS Wave Italy to pass through. So Manuel Lucchetta is actually going a fair distance here. He's almost going to pull this stint 1 hour long. Is he driving in the pits? Yes, he is. I was going to say, if he goes any longer, I would think that he's actually trying to pull a two-stop off. But he's only been able to do just under an hour, so he's going to have to do another pit stop. So, I'm guessing Benny Simonson is going to feed out around about 15 seconds up the road. No. I'm going to say 25 seconds. No, 20 seconds. 20 seconds, I think, is a right amount. No, 25. Yep, 25. Manuel Lucchetta had that incident. The question is, how long does Manuel stop for? Is it going to be a short stop? Is it going to be a fast stop? I think it's going to be a long stop. As there goes Benny Simonson down the inside. One of the Spec Racer Fords. And that is the 246 of Tony Shuck. as Ludwig Guidi comes out of the pits. 32 seconds again. So a full tank of fuel into the car. And how far behind is Ludwig Guidi? 20 seconds behind Benny Simonsen. Surely it'll increase in a second. 20.1. Okay, so it wasn't 25, it was 20. He lost 15 seconds in the pits from having to put more fuel in the car, and he's lost 5 seconds over the course of that stint. And I think pretty much 4 of those seconds was in that incident with the Spunky Pants racing car of Ian Gibson. But let's see how quick Ludwig Guidi is. Ludwig Guidi. I wonder, is that German or is that Swedish? Ludwig. See, Ludwig makes me think German, but then Guidi makes me think Scandinavian. And like Sweden is right between the two. Ah, wonderful, Sam. I look forward to it. We haven't really been looking too much at the Spec Racer Fords, and we do have a potential battle that we can keep our eyes on, because Johan Buitenga is on the back of David Waters. And only 6/10 behind in the battle for P6 in the class. Aha. Oh, hello Sam, welcome to the broadcast. How are you doing? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to...
Sorry, I'm back.
Ah, there we go. Sorry, I sent you a message accidentally as well. I mean, sad to hear about how your race went. How was your race up until that point?
I mean, I always struggled in quali, especially in those cars. I know every driver in front has been doing it for years. I mean, I did a few months last year and then only really got into it this year. But there's a way to warming up the tyres I just can't get. And I think that's where my lack of pace. And I do think they're about a 10th or 2/10 quicker, especially Benny. But I was surprised to keep up with him. And I lost a bit. I lost the pack after the first few minutes. And I lost the draft. Luckily, I managed to come back. But yeah, it's a bit stressful.
I've got to ask as well, because I had absolutely no idea in terms of the strategies what we'd be seeing. Was the plan to take the tyres all the way to the end, or was there a planned tyre change somewhere down the line?
I mean, with the skippies, I do know the tyre wear is minimal. I'm not sure. I've never done an endurance. I was going to check after the first pit stop, see what the tyre wear was, but the initial plan is to go to the end on those tyres.
Okay. One other thing that I do want to ask is, because I noticed at the start of the race, your name is very familiar to me. Did you potentially do BUKC a few years back?
Yeah, I did it last year as well.
Knew it!
Yeah.
Wait, what uni were you with?
So I started at the University of Hertfordshire.
Okay.
So I did my undergrad there, and unfortunately the team was they never finished the season, and I'm doing a master's at the moment at Coventry. And we won it last year.
Lucky boy at Coventry. Oh.
Yeah, we won it last year, and luckily I managed to win the drivers and the lightweights championship as well. So I won all 3, but it was very lucky. So it was good year. I
mean, you say you're very lucky, but I mean, to have won the drivers championship, I think you need a bit more than luck as well.
I mean, obviously Piers Pryor was there. There was some really good drivers, but obviously you need a bit of luck in racing. But yeah, obviously talent was there as well. But it was a really good race. Shame it wasn't streamed.
Talent, and I'm sure ample amounts of it. I guess I'm going to have to turn up for the next finals weekend, whenever that is. I don't know if they're doing one this year, and maybe I'll come say hi to you at some point. Maybe I'll give you a little punterino down into Christmas.
Of course. Thank you. This stream's great, by the way. I just watched the start.
No worries. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me. And I don't actually know. Are there any more races planned for the Endurance Cup?
I do think Benny has a schedule. I'm not sure what the plan is. If we do get enough interest, I'm sure Benny will sort something.
Oh, well, hopefully we can see you for some future races. Sam, thank you very much for joining me, and well, hopefully best of luck in any future races.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wonderful to hear from Sam, and I'm exceptionally happy to realise that my memory is not a complete load of garbage, and I do recognise a fellow BUKC racer when they pop by. And now I'm going to have to do the standard thing, which is to go back to one of my best ever races, which was back at the Clay Pigeons finals in 2018, I want to say. I think it was 2017, 2018 year. Look at my lap times, and then look at what Sam Spinale put in. And then either have a feeling of pride, or get very annoyed for a second when I realise I'm like a 10th off his lap time. Most likely I'll be a few tenths off, but it was a decent weekend for me. So I always look at that as a proof that at some points maybe I can have some pace, as Johan Buitenga wants to show that he can go down the inside of David Waters, but he's a little bit too far behind, and we'll just have to slot on behind the 735 car for now. Battle for P6 in the SRF class. As Manuel Luqueta is typing in the chat, will this be regarding the incident with the Spunky Pants racing car? Well, I have to wait and see. It was just a very unfortunate incident, and a car made a mistake, tried to get out of the way, but Manuel Luqueta tried to avoid in the exact same direction, and I don't really know where you put it. I think Manuel Luqueta probably could have lifted out, but as a racing driver, you never want to lift. You always just want to kind of just swerve around whatever incident is coming your way. Nick Vaughan Roberts into the pits as well. He's going to be dropping from P2 down to probably P3, maybe P4. There's another 20 seconds to serve in the pits or so, give or take. As that is the number 4 of Ludwig Gidi closing on in to Johan Buitenga. We'll be able to overtake him on the exit of Atwood Curve. And next up is David Waters in the Brackman Motorsports car. Can he look for a send down into the hairpin? And indeed he will. Nice and late on the brakes. You can really see the front end of the car just dip down once you get hard on the brakes. And Ludwig Gidi is now clear. And Manuel Luqueta just apologising, so kind of accepting some fault for the incident. And I think it was just a very unfortunate incident there. I think both drivers tried to do the right thing, and it just ended up ending badly, and that does happen from time to time in racing. As Sam Spinale himself said, you do have to have an element of luck, and that element of luck was not there for Ludwig Gidi. And Ludwig Gidi is now 21.5 seconds behind Benny Simonsen. He's lost a second over the last few laps, just over an hour remaining in the race. And don't forget, right now, Benny Simonsen is going to be on a much lighter tank of fuel. So we are expecting him to run fairly quicker than Ludwig Gidi. And from what we have heard as well, these tyres will last to the end, so there's no case of, oh, one car has slightly better tyres than another car. You should be able to just make it all the way to the end, and the only difference in pace will be coming from fuel load. Still seeing Johan Buitenga hot on the heels of David Waters, unable to find a way through. Now, these two may try to work together because Tony Shuck is a further 5 seconds up the road, and then is not too far up from Bobby West and Steve Ray. So there is a chance of P3 for these two. But Johan Buitenga, he's not going to lift and coast. He's going to go down the inside on the run into the hairpin of a turn 5. Locks up the front right tyre and does not have the pace and does not have the bravery on the brakes here to send it down the inside of David Waters. He's going to have to hold on to P7 for now. David Waters, he knows that this is a battle that could determine the final finishing position between these two. And he does not want to work together with Johan Buitenga. He knows that if Johan Buitenga gets past, he's going to kind of pull away into the distance. And he does not want that right now. In terms of pace, Steve Ray put in a 47.0, Bobby West a 46.7, Tony Shuck in P5 put in a 47.6, and then these two putting in 47.5s. So they are closing in on Tony Shuck by a very small margin, but at the same time, they're losing time to the likes of Bobby West and Steve Ray. And I think Johan Buitenga has more pace in the car. 48.2, 48.4 for Buitenga and Waters respectively. Up at the front, Benny Simonsen pulling 7/10 on Ludwig Guidi on the last lap. Oh, that's contact. Contact between the two of them. And I looked away for a split second. Let's ride on board, actually, with Johan Buitenga and just see what happens here. So, let's grab the good old cockpit view. Oh, yeah, that's on David Waters. Loses the back end. Nowhere for Buitenga to go. Now, David Waters clearly over-pushing the car somewhat to try to keep Buitenga at bay. And unsuccessful in the process. And we have our next unfortunate victim in the interview room, Ian De Vried. How you doing?
Yeah, fine, thanks. I don't think I'm that unfortunate, right?
No, not too unfortunate. Your team's doing well. Benny's in the lead and has, I guess, the strategy advantage over Ludwig Guidi at the moment as well.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, he lost like 3 or 4 seconds in that crash. And then now it seems like he's losing like half a second on the straights or something. Well, last lap was pretty decent. Maybe he had some draft, I don't know. But yeah, Benny's doing a great job. So he's putting in some decent times. Trying to like gain a bit of a gap, and then I will go in next stint, and probably Ludwig can come a bit closer again. We'll see.
I've got to ask as well, the strategy called to bring Benny in early to get the the shorter, the splash and dash done. What was that a plan from the start of the race, or was that just after you noticed that Ludwig was able just to stick behind you with the slipstream?
Yeah, well, so we lost Nick, and then we lost Sam as well. And we sort of knew, we still think Nick is trying to like maybe save so much that he has to do a stop less, but we don't know. But basically, we saw that, so it was between the two of us, and we figured, well, let's maybe stop early. Also, because the driver swap takes some time, so you can only do the driver swap in with the full fuel load. So basically, we thought like, hey, let's go in now. Let's not give any draft or whatever. So and let's see if we can pull out.
And I mean, you were able to find the pace, put in the laps to be able to match, if not actually beat Ludwig's times when you had the higher fuel load, or when you had the higher fuel load.
Yeah, it was pretty close, I think, and I mean, Benny is, I think, one of the quickest in the Skippy at the moment. So in that regard, we figured, well, we were confident, and I mean, let's try it. Doing the same strategy, you won't get away from each other anyways because of the draft. It's that heavy in this car, so why not go alternative strategy and see if you can pull a gap? And if you can't, you will probably, in the end of when everything settles, are like be back in each other's draft again. So was a low risk decision, I guess.
I mean, is there a fairly significant pace advantage between, a half tank of fuel and a full tank, or
No,
Is it
no. It's basically looking at it now. It's maybe a tenth, but I mean, the cold tires are a lot slower. So I think 3 years ago or something, we did a 12-hour race at Watkins in the skip, and we didn't switch tires in the full 12 hours.
Okay, wow.
So yeah, they're road tires, and basically they're slow in the first few laps, but once they are heated up, they don't lose much grip, and they don't do much at all. Obviously, since then, iRacing has introduced a new tire model, so we figured out let's test this one a bit.
I wish the F1 Pirellis could last that long.
Yeah, or they would degrade faster and they need more pit stops. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think even when back in karting, I don't even think tires would last like 24 hours. Or if you did take them 24 hours of laps, they'd be very worn by the end of it.
I have no clue what this tire model is in terms of why aren't they like degrading, but hey, it's the way it is. I mean, on the other end, they are actual road tires. The car is pretty light, so I can imagine they don't wear a lot, but I don't know.
I mean, one thing that I do want to ask as well, because I've never driven a Skippy. I've driven the F3 and I think the Formula Renault a couple of times. Is what's the car like to drive? Because yes, it's an open wheeler, but from what I've been told, there's not a lot of downforce on it. So does it handle more like the Mazdas and Radical or the SRFs?
Oh, I have to get in the car. I see. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, after next, then I want an answer. What does it handle like?
Yeah. No worries. I'll give you an answer.
Well, I
see you later.
Thank you very much for joining, and best of luck to you and Benny in the rest of the race. Great to hear from Ian De Vries. I think all of us who've done racing know that feeling, and at least I know it, and probably Sam was. Oh, there's a moment on the rear from Nick Vaughan Roberts, but I know this, and actually Sam Spinell, let me know as well, because I'm pretty sure you would have got this. Did you ever have the moment, I mean, for you probably would have had this at Hertfordshire when you were easily the quickest driver in the team, and you probably would have had it at Coventry when you won Drivers' Championships, and I know I had it back when I was at York, because I was the quickest driver in the team there. But when you come out of your stint and you come out of the car and your team asks you, so, Yusuf, or in your case, so Sam, we noticed that you were pretty quick around the track. What were you doing? Do you have any tips for us? And your mind just kind of goes blank, and you're like, I don't know what I did. I just drove the car around. I just drove the car, and I go broom, I go zoom, and that's it. And then you're like, brake late. Yes, brake late's a good advice, but sometimes you just come out and you just have no idea what you did into certain corners or what was happening. You just get into the zone, and probably remembering what the Skippy's handled like is that comes under that category for Ian De Vries. Maybe we'll ask Benny the same question once he comes out of the car. Let's see if he has an answer after his stint. (11:24) UK time. 53 minutes remaining of the race. Anyone who pits now will be able to make it to the end. Even the Skippies. They'll have to probably stretch it maybe a lap or so, as we're actually seeing Daniele Camereri diving on into the pits after 12 laps, so he's just had his splash and dash stint coming through. Oh, Ian De Vries had to dip. Okay, it's because Benny had just come into the pits. That's why Ian had to leave all of a sudden. He must have just got a message, be like, oh, right, I need to jump into the car. And Ian De Vries has come out about 4 seconds behind Nick Vaughan Roberts. 33.5 second stop. I honestly think I have a feeling that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think every time they take their stint 1 lap shorter than everyone else, that's why their pit stops are 1 second, sorry, their pit stops are 1 second longer. So that would suggest that they're able to take their cars 1 lap. Yeah, 1 lap longer, but I don't think that has actually been the case. I think they've been pitting earlier, so I don't know how their pit stop has actually taken longer. Maybe I'm just completely wrong, and they have actually been pitting later and being able to take their stints that 1 lap longer than everyone else. By the way, for Ian De Vries, he just needs to match Ludwig Giedi's pace. Ludwig currently putting in a low of 44. Is towards the end of this stint on a low fuel load, and Ian De Vries will be having a full tank of fuel now. He's done 2 laps so far, and he needs to take this car to the very end of the race, does Ian De Vries. They've done their 3rd and final stop of the race. Honestly, I think Ian De Vries is going to have to do a bit of fuel saving. I think this pit stop has come through 1 lap too early. Maybe even 2 laps too early for Ian De Vries. And Ludwig Giedi has done 13 laps, and he's going to be staying out for a fair bit longer, I think. At least another 5 laps. And then we'll be pitting at the end of that. Probably, yeah, another 10 laps or so. Maybe another 15 laps for Ludwig Giedi. And then he'll pit, splash and dash, and then the short burst to the end of the race. We say short run to the end, you know, it'll be 30 minutes or so final stint, rather than, you know, what would be a 50-55 minute final stint. We did see actually Nick Vaughan Roberts pulling out an hour, not quite over an hour, but nearly an hour on his stint, and I think Ian De Vries will be having to put out just under an hour. I think 58 minutes or so is going to have to be the length of his stint. For those joining in now, this is the Skip Barber and Spec Race of Ford Endurance Cup here at Okayama. 3 hours of Okayama, and 2 hours and 10 minutes have passed. And what was set to be a pretty thrilling battle between Ludwig Giedi, or actually I shouldn't say Ludwig Giedi because he wasn't in the car at the time, but between Nirvana Sim Racing, Two Fools Racing, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Team NAN, well, sadly went down the drain after Team NAN picked up a time penalty in the pits, and there was an issue with their driver swap. And for Two Fools Racing, I'm not quite sure what happened to them. Oh yeah, they made their pit stop. They've tried to go for a slightly different strategy. They've tried to go for the old 2-stop, and or they've tried to save as much fuel as they can, and as a result, they dropped out of the draft from Nirvana Sim Racing and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they lost a whole bunch of time. And from being able to match the pace, they started losing half a second a lap, and that is why they now find themselves 24 seconds behind Ludwig Giedi. But at the same time, they're probably going to be able to save about 10 seconds or so in their final pit stop, just due to how much more fuel they currently have in the car, how much further they're going to take this. I mean, they've done 10 laps on this stint, and Nirvana Sim Racing have done 14, so at the very least, they're going to be going 4 laps further, just like they did in the opening stint. But because they didn't have the slipstream in future stints, they were unable to save any extra fuel, so they're just those 3-4 laps ahead of Nirvana Sim Racing in terms of strategy. But I hope everyone's having a wonderful Saturday evening and a pleasant Easter weekend so far. It's been a pleasure to bring this race to you so far. If there are any other drivers who'd like to jump on in for an interview, we'd be more than happy to have you pop by for a little bit. It would be nice to have a chat as we're entering, I mean, not just the final third, but probably the final quarter of the race, the final 45 minutes here at Okayama. We have seen a fair amount of battling. We've had our fair share of null action, as some call it. But the strategies have been enforced pretty strong. And right now, the strategy that we're keeping our eye on is that between Nirvana Sim Racing and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ludwig Gidi and Ian De Vried. So, in Ludwig Gidi's next stop, he's going to be having a shorter stop than usual. So instead of losing 55 seconds, he's probably going to be losing around 35 seconds or so. And currently, Ian De Vried is 30 seconds behind. So, Ludwig Gidi will be coming out 5 seconds behind Ian De Vried. The question is, can he pump in some quick laps right now? And how far can he take that tank of fuel? Because he should have a little bit lighter fuel before he makes his final pit stop. And he can use that time to claw back up to Ian De Vried. A key point to remember is Ludwig Gidi lost a fair amount of time in his pit stop, or before his pit stop, due to an incident with the Spunky Pants Racing in Gibson, where Spunky Pants had a moment coming out of a corner. They pulled to the left to allow the Nirvana Sim Racing car through. The Nirvana Sim Racing were fairly close. They saw the incident. They pulled to the left themselves to avoid it. And, well, they ended up having a coming together. The front of Nirvana Sim Racing running into the rear of Spunky Pants and causing the Spunky Pants Spec Racer Ford to spin around, actually on the exit of Piper Corner, which was just in the background of your shot. So we hope that there isn't any damage to Ludwig Gidi's car. We're taking a look at Nick Vorhen Roberts in the Two Fools Racing car. Going to be a very short stop before Nick Vorhen Roberts when that is eventually made. And this is Nirvana Sim Racing, Ludwig Gidi. There isn't any obvious damage to the front end of the car. And it was Manuel Luqueta who was at the wheel of Nirvana Sim Racing up until the previous stop. And Ludwig Gidi doing the final hour and a half of the race. Or roughly final hour and a half. Oh, hey, Manuel. Yeah, I'm sorry about the touch. Tried to avoid, but chose the wrong side. Yeah, no worries, Manuel. I mean, we all saw it on the stream, and to be honest, it was just... It happens, doesn't it? You know, it's just unfortunate. And I think we all make those mistakes at times. You're trying to find the fastest way to get around someone. You don't want to jump on the brakes or lift off, and... Yeah, it's... I think you both try to avoid the incident. You both try to be smart about it, but both of your smartness is cancelled out and made for a rather awkward incident. Car is a little damaged, but no chance to repair it. That is a huge shame. Well, if it makes you feel any better, Manuel, I have it on strong authority from Ian De Vried himself that he's not very quick. And at the moment, Ludwig Guidi has been posting in slightly faster times than Ian De Vries. So, at the moment, from my calculations, when you pit, you're going to come out 5 seconds behind him. And I think you can close him down. So, I think we might have a stadium finish, as we like to call it in endurance racing, when the race comes down to the final lap or so. And hopefully the damage on your car is nothing that will get worse as the race progresses. But we'll see how everything pans out over the next 40 minutes. We're expecting Ludwig Guidi and Mivana Sim Racing to be pitting for their splash and dash in, I'll probably say, around 10 minutes a time. So that kind of summarizes up to about 7 laps. So in 7 laps, Ludwig Guidi will pit. In about 11 laps, we'll see Nick Vaughan-Roberts diving on into the pits himself. Maybe a little bit more. It'll be a short stop. Probably around about 35 seconds in total. They'll probably be in the pits for under 20 seconds, or they'll be stopped in the pits to fuel for under 20 seconds. Probably around 18 usually. From an empty tank to a full tank. In the Skip Barbers, it's about 32 seconds. And they're usually in the pit lane for 52 seconds. So they'll probably be in the pit lane for around about, well, about 37 seconds or something like that. And don't forget, that's being in the pit lane for 37 seconds. So they don't actually lose 37 seconds to everyone else because they are gaining time. As in, like, they're in the pit lane for 37 seconds, but it actually takes, 7 seconds or so to drive past the pit lane. So if it's usually, I'm just trying to think, 17, 15 seconds less than, so it should be 15 seconds under 53, which is, 37 seconds. I think they lose about 30 seconds in the pits, give or take. They've got to slow down for the pit entry line as well, so they'll probably lose around 31 seconds from their pit stop to Ian De Vries, who is going to the end, and I think Ian De Vries has to do a little bit of fuel saving. I personally think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think they've made a slight miscalculation. I think they're 1 lap short, and they've got to save that amount of fuel over the stint, and that will cost them probably about a few seconds. And when they do it, I don't know. To be honest, they probably, if Ludwig Guidi comes out of the pits around Ian De Vries, they'll want to let Ludwig Guidi through just so that they can sit behind, sit in the slipstream, save up the fuel, and then they can have a challenge for the position. But let's see how it does all pan through. I think it was smart of the Ninja Turtles to use Benny Simonson in that second stint. Let Ian De Vries do the first stint. The slower driver can just sit in the DR, in the slipstream train, and save fuel, get a feel for things, and then once there's clear air, that's when they put in their star driver, that's when they put in Benny Simonson to pump out the lap times in the clear air, and that's exactly what he has been able, or what he was able to do. This race is going to be close. I do honestly think this does go to a stadium finish, pretty much. They're going to finish within 5 seconds of each other. And if it wasn't for whatever damage is currently on the Mivana Sim Racing car, I honestly think they'd probably be going, maybe a 10th a lap faster or so, but over the final 50 laps, that's 5 seconds. And that is the difference, isn't it? Between potentially winning a race and finishing down in second. Iron de Vries is right now 32 seconds behind Ludwig Gidi. Ludwig Gidi is pulling last time round, actually gained 6/10 over Iron de Vries. And this is exactly what Ludwig Gidi needs to do. I think Iron de Vries might have been involved in some traffic. Actually, I just want to jump on board with Iron de Vries. I think he would have got past that Spec Racer Ford before the previous lap ended, before the start of this lap. Ludwig Gidi is a little bit stuck here behind the number 1 car of Ludum Racing. He is lapping the Ludum Racing car, so we'll be hoping that the Ludum Racing car moves out of his way pretty lickety split, and that will not happen. Ludwig Gidi will have to pull to the inside on the start-finish straight, use slipstream, and easy move on the brakes. 43.7 last time round from Ludwig Gidi. Ryan de Vries is making his way into Mike Knight corner, flat out through the right-hander, and now down into turn 11, final corner off the track. Use up some of that gravel, bit of extra grip for the tyres. He wants this to be under a 44, but I don't think it will be. Yeah, it's a 44.005. Just over 2/10 slower than what the Movana Sim Racing car put in. And now we're talking about, I mean, still talking about a 32-second gap, but it's getting closer and closer to the actual 32-second mark and no longer being 31.6 seconds. Now actually at 31.8. Honestly, I think when Ludwig Gidi comes out of the pits, he's going to be about 2 seconds behind Iron de Vries. And he has the pace advantage. He may not have the damage advantage. There's getting a bit of a lock up there from Iron de Vries. Not what he would have wanted. And actually, he's lost 4/10 from that lockup alone. So, not good for Iron de Vries, and things are not looking good for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're going to have to start finding some time somewhere, because at the rate that things are going, Iron de Vries is going to lose this lead to Ludwig Gidi at the end of the stop. Now, Ludwig Gidi is on a lighter fuel load. He has less fuel in the car. He has probably around about 20 litres less fuel in the car than Iron de Vries, maybe about 30 litres left. And that will be giving Iron de Vries at least 1/10 a second, maybe even 2/10. But, and this is a big but, Ludwig Gidi last time around 7/10 quicker than Iron de Vries. So no matter how you look at it, fuel difference or no fuel difference, Ludwig Gidi is playing out quicker than Iron de Vries. .33 seconds behind now, Iron de Vries. Honestly, I actually think Ludwig Gidi is going to come out of the pits ahead of Iron de Vries. If Ludwig Gidi can nail his next... I think Ludwig Gidi comes into the pits at the end of the next lap or two. I think you can do about 30 laps on a tank on a tank of fuel. Maybe 30, just under 30. So I think probably 4 laps more from Ludwig Gidi here. If Ludwig Guidi can nail his next 4 laps, I actually think he comes out of the pits ahead of Ian De Vries. Yeah, it's 35 seconds now. Ludwig Guidi, no matter when he pits, he comes out ahead of Ian De Vries. And I think the even more critical aspect is going to be Ian De Vries is not going to be within that slipstream range of Ludwig Guidi. I don't know if Ian De Vries is just slow, or I should say just slower than Ludwig Guidi, or if he's having to save fuel, because I think it's the latter. I still think there was a bit of a fueling mistake from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I still think they put a little bit too little fuel on their splash and dash stint. And I think it's hurting them now. I think there was a miscalculation somewhere, and something has gone slightly wrong for them, as that is one way to take the final corner, Ludwig Guidi. So 43.7 last time round for Mivana Sim Racing. They'll cross the line, 44.0. But then again, Ian De Vries is now 36 seconds. Okay, we have to ride on board. We have to hear how much lifting and coasting there is for Ian De Vries. Little lift. Let's hear if there's a lift into T1. It's straight onto the brakes, but I feel like it is early onto the brakes. 45.6 from Ian De Vries. He's nearly 2 seconds off the pace. Honestly, if this continues from Ian De Vries, he might even drop the P2 spot to Nick Vaughan-Roberts in the Two Fools racing car, which is now apparently the one move race, or the one full racing car. How much fuel does Ian De Vries need to save? And if he's not saving fuel, does he have damage to the car? Because 45s is not what we expect from Ian De Vries. He is much quicker than this. Straight onto the brakes. Ian De Vries is not saving fuel. This is rather bizarre. Maybe he had a moment and he's just not confident enough to get right back on the power in the Skippy. So, Ludwig Guidi last time round of 43.7. Ian De Vries. Please be a good lap for Ian. That's all I can hope for. .45 to 1.5 seconds off the pace. This isn't good. What is good for someone, though, is Two Fools Racing, Nick Vaughan-Roberts, last time round of 43.458. And they are the fastest man on the circuit. They are the fastest car on circuit by a rather substantial margin. If they can keep this pace up, they're going to gain about, what, 5 seconds to Mivana Sim Racing during their pit stop. It's not enough. They're going to be 15 seconds behind. Where has this pace come from Nick Vaughan-Roberts? And why could he not pull off this pace after his first pit stop? Because that's when he needed the pace. That's when he needed to stick with Ludwig Guidi and Ian De Vries. If he had done that, I honestly think Two Fools Racing would win. They're 20 seconds behind Ludwig Guidi. I think they can finish this race within 10 seconds, given the pace that Nick Vaughan is showing right now. Nick Vaughan-Roberts is showing. Because they lost about 10 seconds due to not being within that pit range, due to not being within slipstream range. The commitment from Nick Vaughan-Roberts is incredible. 43.6 last time round from Ludwig Guidi, and for Nick Vaughan-Roberts across the line, 43.521 is another 10th. And then Ian de Vries makes his way into the final corner. .44.9, oh, a second and a half nearly. What is going on? I am rather confused by this, I'll be honest. We know Ian de Vries is quicker than this. He was sticking with Manuel Luqueta before. There's that lifting and coasting. Maybe we just weren't, maybe I just wasn't hearing the lifting and coasting beforehand. He's 39 seconds behind Ludwig Gidi. He's 20 seconds behind Nick Vaughan Roberts. I think Ian de Vries, when Nick Vaughan Roberts pits, I think he's going to come out around 12 seconds behind. Yes. Okay, Benny Simonson has confirmed that. I thought there was a fuel issue. I thought after your second stop, after your second stop, I thought you had slightly underfueled the car. And I was wondering if you'd have to pay the price for it. And I guess it is happening now. Can you confirm, Benny, how much fuel you're missing? Or how many liters of fuel you need to save? Somebody drilled a hole in your tank. Was that somebody you when you put in those blistering laps during your team's second stint or during your first stint? Because those were some very quick laps, so I wouldn't be surprised if those burnt up your fuel. Did the engine just cut out? It sounded like the engine just died for a second. It almost reminded me, again, going back to karting, just when you'd be in like the TKMs, direct drive, no clutches, you slam on the brakes, and then the rears lock up, and because the rears don't turn, the engine stalls for a second, and then you release the brakes, and then the rear wheels start turning it again. They unlock, and then it kick-starts the engine. That's what that reminded me of. Also, I know, guys, I've worked out a way to tell exactly how much Benny and Ian underfueled the car. So what we're going to do is, I remember the time it took a certain Ian de Vries to make his first stop as Ludwig Gidi sends it down the inside. Oh, you need to be careful with those sends. Only half a litre, so we should be okay. So, when Ian de Vries first pitted for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it was an 18-second stop. Oh, I mean the second pit stop. The splash and dash pit stop was 18 seconds. When Ludwig Gidi pits, we're going to take a look at how short the pit stop is. And however many seconds difference there is between the two, that's how much the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles car has been underfueled. Or was underfueled. Obviously, there could be some slight differences because at the end of the first stint, I think Mivano Sim Racing went one lap further, if I'm not mistaken, or vice versa. I can't remember which, so there will be some slight discrepancies, but it will be a way to check. And Ludwig Gidi is going to pit 22 laps remaining, and Ludwig Gidi dives on into the pits. So we're going to be expecting Two Fools Racing to be pitting in about 5 laps time. I think Ludwig Gidi comes out ahead of Ian de Vries. I don't think that is a question. The throttle's back on, so we're going to be out fairly soon. Two Fools Racing have gone by. They still have their stop to do, their final stop. 21 seconds, 22. So we're talking about 3 seconds of underfueling. That means it was a 3-litre underfuel from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is not pleasant. And Ludwig Gidi has pulled it off. Last time round from Ian de Vries at 45.4. He's still fuel saving. So he's had to save those 3 litres of fuel. I still think that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles made a mistake. I think they should have kept on pushing. I think they should have risked it for the biscuit. I think they should have pushed so that when Ludwig Gidi came out of the pits, I think Ian de Vries could have then just sat behind Ludwig Gidi and just saved up fuel and just lifted and coasted on straights just to be able to stick with Ludwig Gidi. Because he's 3.6 seconds behind. That's what, 3 laps of fuel saving? If he had avoided 3 laps of fuel saving, he could have then easily saved it up behind Ludwig Gidi, I think, personally. And I think that is a possible saving grace missed by the TMNT team. And that would also explain why Ian de Vries had to suddenly dip from our interview, because maybe he thought, you know, I've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes until I need to jump in the car. And then all of a sudden he would have got a message from Benny saying, we may have underfueled the car. I need you back in the car in 5 minutes time. You know, 4 laps too early. Well, actually, to be honest, I think I did say before, it wasn't a huge amount. I think I said before we got confirmation from Benny, I think we said that it was a 2-lap underfuel. That's what we estimated it as. And I think 2 laps would kind of equate to around that 3-second difference in the pit stop. So it was a 42-second stop overall from Ludwig Gidi. Nick Vaughan Roberts in the Two Fools Racing car will be having something around a 35-second stop. And at the moment, he is, if I just check, he's 24 seconds, is Nick Vaughan Roberts, ahead of Ian de Vries. So when he pits, he's going to be coming out around 5 seconds behind. Honestly, Nick Vaughan Roberts and Two Fools Racing could have won this race if, after their first stop, they had come out in that slipstream train with Nirvana Sim Racing and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They had the strategy advantage, they just could not find the pace at the start of their second stint. But I tell you what, Ian de Vries is now pushing. He saved up his fuel, they've patched up the hole in the fuel tank, and they're pushing. The question is it too little too late? Last time around, 44.0 for Ian de Vries, 43.9 for Ludwig Gidi. Of course, Ludwig Gidi will be going a little bit slower than he did on his previous stint because he's got a full tank. Oh, well, actually, he doesn't have a full tank of fuel, but he has more fuel than he did at the end of his previous stint. And remember, drivers are not switching their tyres over. There is no need because the tyres can make it to the end. In the words of Ian de Vries, he did a 6 or 12-hour race at Watkins Glen? And he did not switch his tyres at all through the race, or his team didn't switch the tyres at all through the race. And I would imagine Watkins Glen is somewhat harder on the tyres than Okayama. I might be completely wrong there, but more prolonged corners, I feel like Watkins Glen, where, you know, you really get more tyre wear as a result, more heat build up in the tyres. But then again, he did say this was a few years back, and he said this was when tyre wear was more of a factor, I think he said, in the skip Barbers. Okay, we're expecting Nick Vaughan-Roberts to be pitting, I think, at the end of this lap. I don't think he can stretch this to the end of the race. He's been pushing. Last lap of 43.4. This man is on fire right now. He's pulling half a second a lap to Mivano Sim Racing and to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's 25 seconds clear of Ian De Vries. After his pit stop, he will be 5 seconds behind. Where was his pace from Nick Vaughan-Roberts after that first pit stop? That is still the question on my mind. It is now midnight in the UK. Happy Sunday to everyone. Or Easter Sunday? Good Sunday. No, Good Friday. Easter Monday. What's the Sunday called? Happy Easter? Buono Pascal to all of our Italian teams racing. May you find many Easter eggs in your travels tomorrow, I think. The longer Nick Vaughan-Roberts can stay out on track, the better. This commitment. Oh, honestly, this is a beautiful lap from Nick Vaughan-Roberts. Or I should say the commitment he's putting in. It looks good. It feels fast. Yes, there's a little bit of sliding around. There's a little bit of drifting coming into play, but it still feels fantastic to be able to sit on board with it. Okay, so Nick Vaughan-Roberts, if he pits this lap, he would have done 5, or he would have pitted 5 laps after Ludwig Guidi, which is what we would have expected. Unless he's been able to save more fuel than Ludwig Guidi somehow, which is entirely possible. Depending on how you tackle back markers, whether, you know, you try to lift in coast behind them, or whether you go super aggressive to try to get past them as quickly as you can. And that ability to save fuel in those key moments could be the difference between Nick Vaughan-Roberts and Two Fools Racing. Could be the difference between them securing P2, finishing P3. Oh, okay. That last lap from Nick Vaughan-Roberts was a 43.294. That is the fastest lap of the session by 1.5 tenths over what Benny Simonson previously did, which was a 1:43.422. This is a pretty much empty fuel tank, and this is showing how little the tyre wear is here at Okayama, here in the Skippies. Just a quick update on what is happening in the Spec Racer Ford. It is the winner Schnitzels in P1 and P2, and they are 26 seconds clear of West Tech Esports Racing, Bobby West at the helm of the car. Some big intervals pretty much between all the SRF cars. Bit of understeer coming through from Nick Vaughan-Roberts. Into the pits we go. Yes, we will. 13 minutes remaining. This is well and truly a splash and dash to the very end. Nick Vaughan-Roberts has run this tank pretty much dry. Remember, though, as we said, there are those kind of intervals. So he might only be able to add like 9 litres or 13 litres. He might not be able to add the ideal 11. So he may still have a bit of fuel in the car, which might mean he has a somewhat shorter stop than we are expecting. And let's hope for Nick Vaughan-Roberts' sake it is, because the shorter his stop is, the closer he'll be to Ian De Vries, and the better of a race we will have at the end. Expect about 15 seconds in the pits. He's getting ready to go. And there it is, 15.6 seconds. There you can see Ludwig Guidi. There you can see Ian De Vries making their way through turn 1. 3 seconds from Nick Vaughan-Roberts to Ian De Vries. Honestly, Nick Vaughan-Roberts has done the entire race by himself. So kudos to him for doing an entire 3 hours as well as qualifying. But honestly, the start of that second stint, if he had managed to get within that slipstream range right now, he would be alongside Ludwig Guidi. Maybe even ahead. So Nick Vaughan-Roberts and Two Fools Racing, they had the chance, I think, to win. But they lacked pace in their second stint. Okay, with 6.4 seconds behind Ian De Vries, it is not 3 seconds. Or 4 seconds, I think I said before. But let's see what pace he can find. Because both Mivano and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are running in the 43s themselves. So maybe we'll see 2/10 a lap or something being gained by Nick Vaughan Roberts. But I have a feeling it's not enough. And now, pretty much all 3 drivers, all of the teams will have the same amount of fuel on board, give or take, you know, a couple of litres, which is only a kilogram. It doesn't make too much of a difference in the skippies. You know, if it was 5 to 10 kilos, yes, but 1, 2, it's not going to make a huge impact. It's, you know, barely half a tenth, not even that. These cars are light, so any form of weight does have an impact, but 1 or 2 kilos is pretty much negligible. .43.6 from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They gain 3/10 out of Ludwig Gidi. 10 minutes remain of the race. 10 minutes. 7 laps at most. Though I think it might be 3 hours plus 1 lap. I just can't see Nick Vaughan Roberts closing in 6 seconds to Ian De Vries. Honestly, he is pushing. He might very well still be the fastest man on circuit. Also, Giuseppe Tellini, 4 seconds behind the Forgia TV racing team, currently being piloted by Daniele Forgiani, or Forgerini. The last time around, Giuseppe Tellini was 1.5 seconds off the pace. Ooh, you don't like to see that if you're Nick Vaughan Roberts. You don't want to see a Spec Racer forward ahead, just lagging out of the session and then reappearing in front of you. .43.5. Fastest man on track is Nick Vaughan Roberts, and that's despite losing what I think was a 10th through the final corner. He's just too far behind. I think it might very well be done and dusted. Honestly, the pace from Nick Vaughan Robertson, you know, this final hour has been fantastic, but even if he gains half a second a lap, he's only got 5 laps, maximum 6. There it is, 43.6, 3/10. 3/10 is not enough. He needs to be gaining, you know, honestly, a second a lap. It's just too little too late from the 111 Fools racing car. We will be crossing the 100 lap mark. That is pretty much guaranteed. I'm now trying to remember what kind of lap times we pull out in the Mazdas. I think we did 148. 146 under ideal conditions. So Mazdas, same kind of pace. You can have Mazdas as a third class. That sounds good. I like Mazdas. It's the only... Honestly, in Mazdas, I have like a rating. I think I've peaked at around 2,800. I could probably get to 3,000, maybe, if I like only joined races that I was good at. For example, Laguna Seca and Summit Point Raceway. But if I join any other series apart from the Mazdas, I'm like 1,400, if that. It's very depressing. I don't know why. I just think I have no natural talent. I need to grind like for it forever to actually get good in the series, which is why I'm starting to stop doing Mazdas, and when I get a chance, or whenever I do iRacing races, I just jump into Formula Renault 3.5 or Dallara F3s or the GT cars, and don't do well until I get to a point where I can just jump into whatever car and just race against people that I get lumped in with. Just over 5 minutes remaining then, here for the Skip Barber and Spec Racer Ford Endurance Cup here at Okayama. 3-hour race now in, well, the final 5% of the race, really. Final 4 laps or so. I might as well change the old. I forgot that this is. It's got a general, which is oh, I can't seem to... Aha. There we go. There we go. It now says how long we have left. 2 hours and 56 minutes into the race. To be fair, Nick Vaughan Roberts is now 4.6 seconds behind Ian De Vries. He's gained about 1.5 seconds. If he had another 20 laps, I'd say he could do it. Even if he had another 10 laps, I could maybe believe that he could pull it off. But he doesn't have 10 laps. He has 2 laps. Or 3 laps at most. And it is a shame for him. But it's how it goes. I would like to hear from him whatever issues it was that affected him. But it's been a great race from Ivana Sim Racing and Ludwig Gidi. Despite the incident that they were involved in, it cost them about 3 seconds. I think they picked up some damage. They lost about a tenth a lap from that. So arguably they could have been even further ahead. But then again, Ian De Vries has lost about, I want to say 10 seconds. Maybe more than 10 seconds due to having to fuel save. Oh man, it's leaking again. Oh no. Oh. Is this the classic iRacing says you have 3 laps of fuel remaining and then you use more than 1 lap of fuel per lap? I honestly hate that so much. This is going to be a 2-second pit stop for Ian De Vries. I think Nick Vaughan Roberts should just do a drive-through. 7-second pit stop. I think, Nick, if you're listening... The thing is, how short of fuel were you guys, Benny? Because with 2 laps to go, surely you could have saved so much. Or you could have saved enough. I'm just trying to wonder right now. Because this feels like twice now that you haven't realized that you guys have underfueled until really late on. Or you hadn't realized that you didn't actually have enough fuel. Is this... You know what? Actually, I blame Ludwig. I blame Ludwig for being too fast. And because Ludwig's too fast, it means that we're doing 1 extra lap in the race. And you, Benny, I'm sure you guys had calculated 1 less lap. Well, I mean, good job, Nick, I guess. $50 seconds left, and Ludwig Guidi will come across the line. You never know, Ludwig Guidi might run out of fuel. He might have to lift and coast all the way from Sector 3 to the line. Okay, so we've got 1.5 laps, well, 2 laps remaining. 1.2 litres. 2. I thought you were already 2. Wait, hang on. That means you were. I thought you were 2 laps short on fuel. You saved like 2 laps of fuel, and then you were 2 more laps of fuel down. We were 3rd no matter what. I still reckon, Benny, I still think that you could have pushed before so that you would have got slipstream from Mivano and tried to save some fuel. Like, I have no idea. I don't know if you would have been able to save enough fuel, but I think you could have saved fuel without losing time. Without losing a huge amount of time. No? Okay, fair enough. I wanted to believe that there was a way for you to pull it off. And Mivano down the inside! Last lap of the race. Maybe. There was a chance. Save maybe max half a lap. Okay, so you really can't save fuel in these things. Fair enough. Fair enough. Either way, Mivano Sim Racing. I can't say they haven't put a foot wrong all race. There was the incident with the Spunky Pants racing car of Ian Gibson. By the way, Ludwig Guidi will take the checkered flag after 3 hours. Mivano Sim Racing take the win. Nick Vaughan Racing and Nick Vaughan Roberts in the Two Falls Racing car arguably could have won, but they will take P2. And Ian De Vries will come through in P3. It could have been P1, it could have been P2, it could have been P3. And in the end, it will be the final step on the podium for the number 22 car. Giuseppe Tellini has had a rather uneventful race. Will make his way through Mike Knight corner for the final time. And down into turn 11, the aptly named final corner. We'll claim P4 for DRS Wave Italy. Daniele Forgerini down in P5 for the Forgia TV Racing team. And then we go all the way down to Efrem Pozzatti for SPM Racing Team. He's making his way through Atwood Curve. In the Spec Racer Ford, it's this man, Austin Winner, and he's most certainly going to be the winner of the SRF class. 20.5 seconds ahead of his teammate, Ferenc Arabian. And the two of them have been at the wheel of the car for the entire 3 hours, so kudos to them in pulling that one off. West Tech Esports, they claim P3, they've been lapped, so that's locked in. And Ray Esports Racing will claim P4, and actually they've got Austin Winner right on their tail, so they're on the border of getting lapped here. And then actually into the pits comes Domenico Baru. Nico Schuck will claim P5 in the SRF class for MechPom Sim Racing. But there you have it. The end to the 3 hours of Okayama, the Okayama 3 hours. And, well, I think that comment in the chat kind of hits the nail on the head for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. FML. FMR. Maybe. Unfortunate. But, at the very least, less unfortunate than what happened to Sam Spinell in the Team NAN. I think I cursed him. I cursed him by saying he was a fellow BUKC driver of mine, and therefore I wanted him to do well, and maybe I had a bit of caster bias towards him, and the caster curse got applied. But ladies and gents, that is everything, I do believe. There you have it. Oh, my ears. These are starting to press my ears a bit. 3 hours of Okayama done and dusted. Congrats to Mivana Sim Racing and Winner Schnitzels. I hope the Winner Schnitzels will be grabbing a few schnitzels for themselves and enjoying their schnitzels. Maybe Mivana Sim Racing can take some schnitzels as well. As Ian Reed has joined us in the interview room. Ian,
I'd rather not.
I was thinking that, but you've jumped on in. I didn't drag you. When?
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to ask, when did you find out that, as Benny put it, the car was leaking fuel?
Well, the moment I got in the car, basically, when I rushed out the interview, I was like, hey, he should have done 3 laps more, and we should have been okay.
Yeah.
But apparently, he has a heavy right foot.
I mean, was it definitely Benny's fault then? Was he just, was he the one who leaked the fuel?
Obviously.
Okay. you better hope he doesn't jump into the interview room now.
He is coming in, I think. I mean, we need to congratulate Mivano on good math.
Of course.
So, I mean, at least
I think most of the teams,
calculator that worked.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Mivano, we'll drag in Ludwig Gidi. Ludwig, Ian just wanted to congratulate you on good iRacing maths with fuel.
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, it went pretty well. I have to say, Manuel did almost the whole job. So, yeah, was just bringing the car home. So, yeah, really pleased with the result.
So, I do want to ask, when did you realize that there was potentially a fuel issue for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles car? Was it pretty much as soon as they finished their second stint, or was it after that?
Actually, we didn't really know, in the sense that we did different strategies. So I was actually surprised that they were short on fuel. So yeah, actually we put too much fuel. We had like fuel for another 5 or 6 laps, so we didn't do the calculation that right. But yeah, I thought they would be near us and they wouldn't have any problem with the fuel. So yeah, I was a bit surprised.
Well, I'm sure most will say now after this race, more is better than less. That final stint then, was it just fairly easy? Just, bring the car home to the end?
Actually, not that easy in the sense that I didn't practice at all. So it was like my first lap of the day was when I came in the race. So yeah, wasn't that easy, especially as everyone had a different strategy. So you had to push without knowing where the other were. But yeah, we made it. So huge congrats to my teammates also that did a great job.
And the final question that I do want to ask is, Manuel Lucata said that there was a bit of damage on the front of the car from his incident. Could you feel the damage? And if you could, how much time was it costing you?
Actually, in the handling, I didn't feel anything. Maybe on the straight, might have changed a bit, but not a huge difference. Maybe one tenth and a half, or as I didn't drive before with a perfect car, I don't exactly know the difference, but I would guess it's about 1/10, 1.5, not much. The car was fine, so yeah.
Well, either way, Ludwig, congrats to you and Manuel on picking up the win.
Thank you, and congrats to the podium. Thanks to Benny for organizing this event. So yeah, it's a pleasure to drive with these guys.
Well, speaking of Benny, Benny has jumped in with us now. Ian's blamed you. He said that it was all your fault for the fuel leaking incident. Apparently, you've got a heavy right foot.
Well, I blame the guy doing the fuel while I'm in the car. It's pretty simple, isn't it? And then I mean, he also drives quite slow because he leaves his foot on the brake the whole lap around. So it's obviously carrying more fuel, burning more fuel that way. So
I need to warm the tires. I learned from you.
I mean, I did see when Ian came out of the pits, you know, right at the end, I did notice a bit of weaving, you know, trying to get some heat in the tires.
I think that's just his driving style. He's always struggled to keep the car in a straight line.
Well, I'm glad you're taking it better than I thought you would. Okay, I do want to ask though, which pit stop was it where the mistake happened? Was it when you first came into the pits for the you know, the splash and dash, or was it after that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's. I think it could be any stop because it's any of the stops. We should just add 2 more liters. It doesn't like, but ideally the second stop we should have gone 2 liters longer.
To be fair, only the short stop we could have had 2 liters because the other one, the first one you got out as the moment the driver switch was run. So that was only like half a liter or something. So basically it was when you entered the pits, left too early. And I'm not blaming and pointing fingers,
You are.
but it was definitely you.
So
But it doesn't matter.
I have no comment.
So
just need a better co-driver.
yeah, Ian, what are you gonna do to prevent this happening in the future? Are you just gonna ban Benny from doing any form of maths?
So we have a teammate from the past who always did the calculations, and I guess I'll ask him to jump in, and maybe he could do some faster laps than Benny, because basically we're both turtles, and we need Master Splinter in here, I guess.
Well, I mean, speaking of jumping in and being turtles, I'm gonna drag Nick in because I think he's getting a bit lonely in the waiting room. Now, Nick, what on earth was that pace at the end?
Well, I obviously tried to fuel save on the first stint, like everyone else was, I suppose. And it was nearly an hour up, and I thought maybe I could just do 2 stops. It was probably very unlikely, but I didn't have a clue what to do, to be honest, from the start. And then the second stint, I just thought I had to go really slow in order to save fuel, just to see, and it wasn't happening. So the last stint, I just went for it.
In hindsight, because I was wondering when you came out of the pits after your first stint, you couldn't really close back into the top 2. If you could go back and you could do that second stint again, do you think you would have had the pace to take the win?
I don't know.
Yes.
Possibly. The thing is, yeah, I tried to catch up with him, and that obviously burned off a bit of fuel because I knew I had to be in their toe in order to stand a chance.
Yeah.
And even fueling at the end, I think I finished the race with 0.9 of a gallon left, so I probably had quite a bit of time there as well. Just bad organising for me.
I mean, I think what you could have done is you could have tried to drive, you know, siphon some fuel from your tank into into the Turtles car. I think they needed. I don't know if it would have been.
Yeah,
enough.
that was a shame. Yeah, it's 2 laps I think you had left, and yeah, I thought you had that definitely second. I thought you were going to win it, to be honest. But...
We thought so too.
Yeah.
I mean,
great race.
Nick, I mean, yeah, final question. Just how was the race and qualifying in general for you?
Yeah, I've had quite a bit of practice. I think it was one of the earlier tracks in the season, so it wasn't like I needed to do much practice for it. I knew the track pretty well, and quali was fine. Good laps, all three, and then yeah, race was good. Good pace at the end. I was quite happy with that. So it was hard work, hot work,
Well,
exhausted.
congrats on the P2 in the end, and thanks for
Yeah,
joining.
congrats on the win.
And congrats again to Ludwig on the race win.
Yeah.
And I guess I should say a big thanks to Ian and Benny for being such great sports despite the incidents that occurred during the race. And again, thank you, Benny, for having me on the stream.
No problem. No problem. My pleasure. Thanks for
All right.
coming.
On that note, I
Yeah.
think I shall bid adieu to anyone, unless, Benny, do you want to give any final shout-outs on the stream before I end things?
Nah, all good, mate. All good.
Look forward to watching it back.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, if anyone is watching and is interested in joining, I think I left the link to joining the iRacing League down in the description. But for myself and from